The Monster of Gotham. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76. Absolutely crazy and emotionless. Late at night in St. Mary's Hospital, the old security guard who couldn't stay up late was already fast asleep in the duty room, snoring loudly. Tap, tap. A figure in the foggy night walked in leisurely, covered in moonlight. He shook his windbreaker after entering the hospital lobby. This place is really hard to find, he complained and walked to the service desk. There was obviously not enough money to equip young and beautiful nurses to receive the reception. There was only a man with bags under his eyes darker than his eyebrows, dozing off at the front desk. The man was wearing a white coat, and he should be a doctor. Knock, knock. The knuckles of his fingers gently tapped the table. Who are you? The doctor opened his eyes with difficulty and looked at the figure in front of him with dark bags under his eyes. It was a yellow man wearing a long windbreaker stained with dew, with a smile that didn't fit the atmosphere on his face. The person who came was Lizu. He wasted a lot of energy to come here. As mentioned before, half of Oakland was flooded, just like Venice. The geographical environment is like Venice, but there are not enough cruise ships, so it is not easy to move in Oakland late at night. Fortunately, it was late at night, and Lizu was able to use some of his own methods to cross the flooded streets in the town without boats or swimming. Thinking of this, he tilted his head and took off a white feather on his shoulder. I'm looking for a gentleman whose shoulder was hit by an axe. He is a captain. Lizu gestured at his chest. There is no such person. The doctor was reluctant to raise his eyelids. After a quick glance at Lizu, his eyelids drooped. Really? Lizu scratched the back of his head in distress. If a person who was hit by an axe is not a fool, he will definitely go to the hospital. From the information that Lizu had inquired with great difficulty, there is only this one hospital in the whole town. Stranger, it's hard to get help here. The doctor seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly became alert and stared at Lizu's decadent face. Do you often see hallucinations and have intermittent headaches? Headache? No, no, no. I just see some hallucinations uncontrollably sometimes. Lizu scratched his cheek with his index finger and recalled. Then the mind went out of control and went crazy. It became more and more obvious after coming to this world. Do you know why? He asked the doctor back. Of course, I'm studying this thing. Recently, too many people have gone crazy because of those monsters with multiple legs and monsters holding their faces. I spent a lot of effort to find an antidote that can soothe the mind. The doctor picked up a bottle of potion from the table and handed it to Lizu eagerly. You can try this thing. It will definitely cure your madness. I have studied it for a long time. Monster holding its face? Lizu heard something that interested him more, and he asked. Someone in Oakland worships that thing. You can find it by following that group of crazy believers, but I'm sure you definitely don't like it. Try this bottle of medicine, the doctor urged. It seems that he found a favorite guinea pig. Lizu took the potion. That bastard Sanders also encountered these monsters. He was cursing at me. He must have been affected by the monsters. If you are looking for Sanders, I'm helping you, the doctor added, but it seemed more like he was telling Lizu that drinking the potion would give him the location of Captain Sanders. This is a good deal. Lizu did not hesitate any longer. He raised his head and drank the potion in one gulp. As long as he was a normal person, he would never drink something of unknown origin, but there are some people in the world who would drink it without hesitation. For example, a madman who is not afraid of death. For example, a person with two lives. For example, Lizu. Gulp, gulp. His throat moved with difficulty. Ha. Lizu wiped the corners of his mouth. He was tortured by the strong smell of the medicine inside. After the potion was swallowed, the effect was immediate. The maddening buzzing sound filled his ears. He began to have hallucinations. The blue man squatting on the ground, the huge bloody monster made of skinned human corpses, the ghoul with a pale humanoid face. The crazy consciousness began to get out of control. This was the first time that Lizu's brain was occupied by madness and controlled by madness. Ahem. He fell to the ground and curled up into a ball. Those crazy thoughts almost tore his head apart. He scratched the top of his head hard, crunching, very hard. He wanted to tear his head apart and then get out of the skin completely. Maybe this would slow down the crazy thoughts in his mind. Ha 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 ha. Lizu began to laugh unconsciously, a crazy laugh from the spirit. A morbid crazy laugh. When he was about to lose consciousness, he threw something. Sweetheart. A panicked woman's voice. It was Harley Quinn. Lizu's consciousness gradually blurred. He could only vaguely hear Harley Quinn threatening the doctor. If my little sweetheart is in danger, I will definitely make your head into a yo-yo. And the doctor's frightened response. The doctor felt innocent of all this. The needle was inserted into the neck, and the yellow liquid was slowly pushed in. Lizu woke up. The madness in his heart disappeared, and with it all his emotions. Percy? Lizu turned his head calmly, and looked at Harley Quinn, who was looking at him with concern. You were crazy just now. I think this thing may make you calm like Hawkgirl. Harley Quinn crossed her arms to her chest, blinked her big eyes with purple eyeshadow, and asked for credit. I did the right thing, didn't I? Emotions are really waste. Lizu made another comment with a cold face. I was influenced by emotions and crazy thoughts, and I actually did these meaningless things. The results should have been investigated long ago. Honey, are you okay? Harley Quinn was still laughing. The yo-yo in her hand turned into different flower patterns. Her attention was obviously not on Lizu. I'm fine. Lizu slowly walked towards the stunned doctor, with the gun pointed at his head. I'm here to get my reward. Sanders is in the ward upstairs. Sir. The doctor didn't dare to hide this time. Since his life was at stake, he was very cooperative. But then he asked expectantly, how do you feel after drinking those drugs? Crazy. Losing my own madness. Lizu strode upstairs. Captain Sanders was lying on the hospital bed. Anesthetics were also scarce here. Sanders could only lie on the bed, under the moonlight, enduring the pain, and forcing himself to sleep. With a squeak, Lizu pushed the door open, and went straight to Captain Sanders, who was lying on the bed, and went straight to him. It was really straight to the point. Without the restraint of emotion, Lizu directly pulled out the sword, and put it on Captain Sanders' neck. Albert Slogmorton sailed with you? Who are you? Sanders swallowed subconsciously. The blade was cold, and his neck had been cut by the sharp blade. A slight sting. Horror. You have an expedition team. What are you investigating? And what happened? Lizu continued to ask. After losing his emotions, he acted like a completely different person, without the burden of laughter and teasing. But who dares to say that Lizu, who has no emotions, and is decisive in killing, would be more terrifying? I can't remember clearly. Captain Sanders lowered his head. I only remember that we went to the Devil's Fang. We dived deep into the seabed. There was a magical place. Then I lost my memory. When we woke up again, we were already on the ship. Albert was crazy, and his madness was contagious. We had to send Albert back alone in a lifeboat. Sanders was a little scared, but after arriving on the shore, my entire crew still went crazy. After that fight, I was the only one who survived with difficulty. After saying that, he slowly looked up at Lizu, but found that the figure had disappeared in front of him. Only the windows were wide open, and the moonlight and cool breeze pulled the white silk curtains to shake. Thank you Papaya is a good person for the 500 starting coins reward. Thank you Cute and Cute Timo for the 100 starting coins reward. Thank you 2942 500 starting coins reward. Thank you One Way Travel for the 100 starting coins reward. Chapter 77 Crazy Believer. The next morning, Charles Reed, wrapped in a windbreaker, tore through the fog and rushed to St. Mary's Hospital. The police were investigating a case on the first floor. The doctor, with heavy dark bags under his eyes, yawned and reported the horror of last night. But when he got excited, he would scream in excitement. Last night, a yellow man came to see Sanders and found that he was also tortured by hallucinations. I asked him to try the latest medicine, but of course it was not important. He had a gun, and he threw something, and turned into a girl. Opposite the dancing doctor, the police nodded perfunctorily and asked, yeah, of course he can change into a living person. It seems that he has made up his mind. Sir, can I ask him 2 questions? Reed walked over and asked. So he is the great detective who solved the death of Albert Slogmorton. The police turned around following the voice, and his words of pretended respect were full of sarcasm. Of course you can investigate. The Throgmorton family is an investor in the police department. We will definitely give you a green light. But I advise you to be more obedient. The policeman approached Reed's ear and whispered in a threatening voice, "Put away your detective tricks. We don't want Mr. Throgmorton to think that a foreigner is just a waste who only collects salaries because of him." The policeman took a half step back and raised his hand to signal, "Please, great detective. I will take him to a sanatorium after you ask him questions." Reed smiled. He would definitely become a thorn in the eyes of some people if he showed off his attention, but he was still a little surprised by the smooth flow of information in the town. Reed automatically ignored the policeman's threatening words and asked, "Sanatorium? That's where these guys with hallucinations in their heads go. There are more and more of them recently. Since the flood, he is a very knowledgeable doctor, but unfortunately he couldn't escape the terrifying hallucinations. That must be a place full of creativity," Reed said as he approached the decadent doctor. "Excuse me, has anyone been admitted to the hospital recently with an axe wound to the chest?" "Sanders? Damn, it's Sanders again. He's upstairs. There's only one guy who was chopped with an axe." The doctor was very excited. It seemed that Captain Sanders really didn't bring him any good news. Who else came to see him? The detective could easily grasp the key information in the words. "Hey, you want me to repeat it again?" The doctor, who didn't want to cooperate, looked at the police who were staring at him and softened his temper again. "Well, there was a yellow-skinned man who looked like a madman who came here last night. He was also looking for Sanders. That bastard could actually turn into a woman, a living woman." When the doctor mentioned the scene that a normal person would never see, he began to go crazy, with bloodshot eyes and dark bags under his eyes, which was very scary. "Bruce? He is really investigating something. Albert's death case, saving the old night watchman one step ahead of himself, and being the first to contact Captain Sanders." A few things added together made it difficult for Reed not to doubt the other party's purpose. After thanking him, Reed quickly rushed to the second floor. But after searching for several times, Captain Sanders was not found. Captain Sanders chose to leave without saying goodbye. Even the doctors here did not know where he went. Only an old woman was walking back and forth in the corridor, as if waiting for Reed to talk to her. Reed did stop the old woman and stared at her with his scarred eyes. "Madam, was there a patient with an axe wound on his chest admitted yesterday?" The old woman raised her head, and the wrinkles on her forehead were squeezed into layers, like the wrinkled skin of a weathered Douglas fir. There was no spirit in her turbid eyes. She slowly raised a finger and waited quietly for Reed. "It's yours." Reed consciously took out a bullet. "Last night, a yellow man with a strange knife came here with a woman who could laugh crazily." The old woman grabbed the bullet and put it in the pocket of her hospital gown. "He was like the god of death, full of murderous intent. They talked about something, but I only heard Sanders' frightened voice clearly. Then Sanders left overnight. A yellow man like the god of death, with a woman who could laugh crazily beside him?" Reed was a little confused. "Who is this yellow man? He doesn't sound like Bruce." The crazy doctor downstairs said that the yellow man could transform into a woman, and the old woman upstairs also mentioned the woman who could laugh crazily. If it's Bruce, then he really has unusual abilities. But this is not a major discovery for Reed. Instead, his progress in investigating the case had to be put on hold because of the disappearance of Captain Sanders. Of course, it is not completely stagnant. As long as Bruce is found and relevant clues are obtained, everything will be solved. Standing at the window on the second floor, Reed, whose vision was blocked by the sea fog, muttered to himself, "Bruce, where will you be?" This feeling of being one step ahead of others is very uncomfortable. Shortly after dawn, the sea fog was very heavy. The townspeople who were walking on the road were caught off guard by the sudden light rain and ran faster. In Oakmont Town, near Cafussay, at the crossroads next to St. Mary's Hospital, next to the crooked cypress tree, there was a rusty red telephone booth. The rain fell on the iron cover of the telephone booth, making a clattering sound. A man holding a cowhide briefcase ran past in the rain, and at the same time he glanced at the telephone booth, with obvious fear in his eyes, and then he ran away at a faster speed. Not long after, a man with a strange eye tattoo on his body came from the intersection. He let the rain soak him and muttered to himself. Perhaps he saw the telephone booth, so he stopped. Unlike the man holding the briefcase just now. Plop. The tattooed man slammed his knees to the ground and raised his hands above his head as if holding something sacred. Like a devout believer, he sang praises to his god in a strange language. Just then, a sea breeze blew in, dispersing some of the mist and revealing something hanging on the phone booth. It was a monster puppet soaked by rain, with multiple jointed legs and feet similar to human hands at the end, with a crack in the middle. Just one look was enough to drive people into uncontrollable madness. After that, people kept passing by, but each had a different expression. Some hid far away, while others knelt on the ground and praised devoutly. More and more strange believers gathered. Their obscure prayers frightened passers-by and they avoided them. A terrible illegal assembly. Isn't it too much? At the corner of the street, Lee Zeus strode forward, and Harley Quinn followed closely behind, chewing bubble gum and playing with a yo-yo. They quietly watched the dozen crazy believers kneeling down to pray to the monster puppet. No, just right. Lee Zeus answered calmly. Cold Harley Quinn pouted, just like that old Batman. Whoosh, the bubbles are blown bigger. Then it popped and exploded. Ha ha ha. Harley Quinn laughed. Thank you reader 11597414176896499152 for the 100 starting coins reward, and thank you Zie Geos Hangban for the 100 starting coins reward. Chapter 78, Face-Tearing Monster. The believers who knelt on the ground banged their foreheads on the ground to express their most devout faith. Their heads and faces were covered with mud and water. Some of it even splashed into their mouths. They seemed not to notice, but just kept increasing their strength. A strange phenomenon suddenly appeared. First, a strange sound was heard, and then, the thing hanging on the red telephone booth struggled to jump up. It was alive. The believers who knelt on the ground became more fanatical, and praised the monster more crazily with words, until the monster rushed into the rain and disappeared. Everything returned to calm, but the believers stood up, and dispersed as if nothing had happened. Everything started abruptly and ended abruptly. What are you going to do now? Harley Quinn looked at the man in front of her who was emitting a cold breath. Chase swish. Lee Zeus turned over nimbly and jumped onto the high wall and ran into the fog and water. Harley Quinn wrinkled her nose hard, and it was obvious that she didn't like the cold Lee Zeus now. Tom, the man with a yellow beard. He was one of the believers who had just knelt down by the road. The people in this small town had a variety of beliefs. Some believed in the god who gave birth to everything, while others believed in blindness and confusion. The famous Innsmouth people also had their own father god, but the name was obscure and could not be mentioned easily. Tom walked towards home. His teenage daughter was already waiting for him at the door. After overtime at the glass factory, Tom looked listless, but the sudden arrival of Faith made him look energetic. Two figures had been following him quietly. Why are we following him? Shouldn't we chase the puppy now? The Joker girl, swinging her yo-yo, approached Lee Zeus and asked. Puppy was the affectionate name that yo-yo gave to the monster that escaped. He can give us what we want. Lee Zeus calmly watched Tom's back as he walked away. Boxian can completely suppress emotions. In theory, emotions also include madness. Lee Zeus' madness was obviously not caused by physiology, which also allowed him to feel the madness impacting his brain when his brain remained absolutely rational after the injection of Boxian. There was a voice guiding him to follow Tom. It was a whisper in the air that was easily ignored. It could also be said to be a vague intuition, like a prompt from God in the dark. What made Lee Zeus confirm that this prompt really existed and was not an illusion was because of the prayer of the believers before that. When he saw that scene, the degree of world exploration increased by 0.3%. This place is so comfortable. Yao stretched lazily, jumped and turned half a circle, like a restless little devil. It's like I'm still in Gotham, still following. She paused. After being abandoned and resurrected from the dead, the absolute God in her heart was no longer absolute. What should we do next? It must be said that the way Harley Quinn changed the subject was very rough. There's something wrong with that family. Let's go in and take a look. It really looks a bit like that annoying big bat. Harley Quinn muttered unhappily, but followed him. She only knew Lizu in this place. In addition to waiting for Lizu to recover from the drug and return to normal, she had no other way. The door of Tom's house had been closed. The two stood at the door. Gilu, gilu. A familiar strange sound, very sticky. Lizu quickly took out a palm-sized toy samurai sword from his pocket. In a blink of an eye, the toy turned into a real samurai sword, slung across his waist. You go in and protect that family. After saying that, Lizu had already jumped up and climbed to the second floor. Have you really become Batman? Harley Quinn couldn't believe it. We are supervillains. How can we protect others? This doesn't fit our setting. She whispered, but suddenly laughed again. I also want to taste the feeling of being a superhero. That must be super fun. Harley Quinn took out a new piece of bubble gum and threw it into her mouth before raising her hand to knock on the door. With his acrobatics ability, Lizu can easily fly over the eaves and walls, including climbing the rain-soaked walls and climbing to the second floor. The knife slashed, and the glass window on the second floor was neatly cut off, and before it fell, Lizu pinched it at a faster speed and gently placed it on the ground. That's right, he has successfully climbed in. Standing in front of the window, holding a long sword, the rain behind him was blowing in through the window, lifting his windbreaker and swaying. Gurgle. The sound was like the greasy sound of soap bubbles. He walked slowly with a cold face. Ugh. Ah. Walking into the door of a room near the stairs, a woman's suppressed cry of pain could be heard. Gurgle. Gurgle. The sound was on the other side. The smell of the sea in the air became heavier, and there were strange noises. Bang bang bang. Something hitting the wall, like a blind strong man who couldn't stand steadily, hitting the wall with every step he took. Lizu slowed down his pace, holding the sword tightly in his right hand, and slightly moving the muzzle of the pistol in his left hand forward. The sound came from the bathroom with the door half open. Splash. The sound sounded like a stone tore through the surface of the lake and hit the water. A mass of thick black thing silently melted the bathroom door and hit Lizu's face. The abilities of acrobatics and gunfighting allowed him to successfully avoid the thick black strange liquid. He bent down and kneeled, kicking his feet against the door. He pushed open the door with a big hole, melted in it with the strength of his body, and rolled into the narrow room. Ugh. Gurgle. It was a blue man, with a bloated body and bright blisters that looked like pustules. The moment he saw the blue man, Lizu's brain was hit by even crazier content, and he became more and more out of control. Physically, he had no expression on his face, and mentally, he was almost crazy. World exploration degree, 3%. It was a monster that was closer to the truth of the world. The blue man kept holding his head with both hands. It lowered its head, which should be its head. A huge flesh crack almost split its head in two. The blue hands were pulling half of its face from left to right, almost breaking its own head apart. The black viscous liquid was bred in it. Ugh, an obvious vomiting sound. Then another ball of liquid hit Lizu. There was no way to dodge in the narrow space. Even though Lizu had already drawn his sword and chopped the blue man at the first moment, he still couldn't stop the sticky black liquid from hitting him. World exploration degree, 5%. Nearly countless illusions came. If it weren't for Boxian, he might have laughed like the poor people who were infected with the laughing gas virus and then died. In the wash of illusions, Lizu stood up unconsciously and faced the mirror. He had no expression on his face outside the mirror, but he was laughing wildly in the mirror. He raised the pistol in his left hand and pointed it at his own head. Chapter 79. Crazy. Bang. The closed door blocked the rain and fog from outside. Tom took off his windbreaker and went straight to the sofa. Dad, I felt a little uncomfortable last night. The daughter took her father's rain-soaked windbreaker and shook it gently before hanging it on the wall. Looking closely at the room, except for the peeling wall paint, the whole house still retains the traces of the previous generation of owners. For example, the wooden table from the end of the last century, the crystal chandelier, and the black and patterned blanket when entering the door. What's wrong with you? Tom asked, very carelessly. Disgusting, the daughter said with a very bad face. I always feel like I want to vomit something. I want to go to the hospital to check. She really retched twice, but she didn't spit out anything except saliva. I haven't received my salary yet. There was a flood recently. Work is not as easy as before. It's hard to make money. Tom sat back on the sofa. His daughter's plan to spend money to go to the hospital for examination was rejected by him. "Where's your mother?" He turned his head around and didn't see his wife. She was in a bad condition last night and she screamed in pain for a long time. She just fell asleep. "Should we take her to the hospital?" the daughter asked tentatively. She was very worried about her mother. Tom yawned, and he said his next plan with a tired expression, "Since she is asleep, let me sleep for a while. Several workers have disappeared recently, and my workload has increased a lot." But the daughter hesitated, and a knock on the door interrupted what she wanted to say. She turned and walked towards the door. As soon as she opened the door, a fragrance hit her. It was some kind of high-end perfume that only women from big families like Throgmorton could spray. Even if she had never smelled it, in her imagination, the perfume of noble ladies smelled like this. She looked carefully at the unexpected visitor standing at the door. It was a stranger with a pink and blue ponytail, wearing an ordinary white t-shirt. The wet clothes were close to her skin, completely outlining her hot figure. The stranger blew a big pink bubble, and with a snap, the bubble burst. The sweet air with the smell of strawberries floated out of the bursting bubbles. "What's wrong with you?" The girl inherited Oakman's excellent xenophobic genes and would keep strangers at a distance. "Is someone in your family sick?" "No," the girl answered decisively. "Then why is there a constant sound of spitting?" the stranger said, pointing to the top of his head. "Holding your breath and listening carefully, you can hear the hurried footsteps on the roof, the sound of the floor being hit, the sound of hitting the wall, and the sound of spitting, as well as the strange sound of gurgling. It seems that this family has hidden a human-shaped snot monster upstairs, which is constantly secreting disgusting sticky liquid." "Mom." The girl remembered her mother who was in poor health. She left the stranger at the door and turned to rush upstairs. Lena. Tom, who was sitting on the sofa and about to doze off, was awakened by a scream. Tom also saw the stranger standing at the door at the first time, even though this stranger looked so sexy and so weird. He glared at the woman at the door threateningly. "Strangers are not welcome here." Tom stood up and planned to drive the stranger out. Suddenly, his daughter Lena screamed upstairs, interrupting Tom's action to drive the stranger away. "Lena, don't worry, I'm here." Tom quickly rushed to the second floor. As soon as he reached the stairs, he saw his daughter Lena fell to the ground, supporting the ground with her elbows, lying on the ground diagonally. It seemed that her whole body was stiff, and she was frightened by something, and couldn't move at all. Tom quickly rushed to his daughter's side, but he also saw the culprit who made his daughter scream. It was a person. No, it was just a humanoid thing. It had a twisted and bloated body, and held its face with both hands. That must be a face. A large oval piece of meat, with a big crack in the middle, like a watermelon split by a knife. Dad, it's wearing Mom's pajamas." Lena was horrified to find that the monster was wearing her mother's sunflower patterned pajamas. She prayed to her father for spiritual comfort, but received no response. When Lena turned her head, she found her father kneeling on the ground, bowing to the monster. The sudden change made Lena open her mouth. Another scream. But this time the scream did not come from Lena or Tom, but from the stranger with two-colored hair behind the two people. "Sweetheart, there are disgusting things here. Come and save us." She held her hands in front of her mouth in a trumpet shape. Just looking at her smiling eyes and exaggerated movements, she did not show any fear when she saw the monster. She might just do this for fun. Boom. The wooden door of the bathroom next to it was knocked away, and a black shadow was ejected. The white knife light passed like a meteor. The black figure squatting on the ground, holding the knife with his backhand, stopped in front of Tom and his daughter. Lena's snot and tears mixed together, looking at the scene in front of her in astonishment, while Tom still bowed to the monster crazily. With a bang, the monster holding his face had its two thick legs and arms chopped off diagonally, and fell to the ground powerlessly. The shadow slowly stood up, and after the knife fell, he calmly sheathed it. It was a yellow man, and it was not easy to see a yellow man here. This man was Lizu, who had just fought with the blue humanoid monster. A few screams brought him back to his senses from the madness, and after killing the blue monster, he had already noticed that the one hiding in the next room was also a similar monster. "Do you know what this is?" Lizu's expression was serious, and there was no emotion, just like a machine. My mother. Hey, your father's taste is really weird, someone behind interrupted. My mother is not like this. I don't know why she became like this. Lina was a little angry. She couldn't bear others to see the miserable state of her family, but she still joked. A human being? Lizu looked at Tom, who was kneeling on the ground, turned around quickly, and cut with a knife, killing the monster behind him immediately. The death of the monster seemed to have less mental impact, and Tom began to regain consciousness. What is this? Tom saw the monster with its head and limbs cut off for the first time and was shocked. Lizu, who looked calm, had left Tom's house after killing the monster with Harley Quinn. What are you thinking about? Harley Quinn approached Lizu curiously. Since Lizu injected Persian last night, his expression has not changed, but she rarely saw some expression just now. It was an expression of exploration. This is an infectious disease, Lizu said. Oh, I thought it was really her mother. Harley Quinn covered her mouth and laughed secretly. The laughter of madmen is always different from that of ordinary people. These things will not only infect people's minds and make people crazy, but also infect their bodies. No one can avoid it. Through contact with this town, Lizu had a rough guess about his madness that kept deepening across multiple worlds, as well as those strange dreams and hallucinations. I believe Charles Reed also has similar troubles. What about you? Have you been infected? Harley Quinn asked back. Become like a madman? Like me? Me? Lizu had a cold face. He did not stop and strode into the rain. I'm crazy. Chapter 80. Diving into the seabed. It was almost dusk. A small boat with the word Titania printed on it sailed out of the dock from Grimhaven Bay. A man in a windbreaker and a calm face was steering the boat. Beside him, a woman in brightly colored clothes with blue and pink hair was stretching like a cat, like a character with conspicuous colors breaking into a black and white silent film. The boat sailed into the deep sea, and the colors were slowly swallowed up by the surging sea. In the sea, you can still hear faintly, "Sweetheart, is it okay to let him follow us?" Devil's fangs. The boat stopped, and Harley Quinn jumped off the boat first, regardless of the cold sea water covering her calves. She put her hands on the pergola and looked around. "Sweetheart, there is nothing here." She looked disappointed. There was no trace of other human activities, except the endless sea water and the obviously abandoned port. "Sweetheart?" Yao, who did not get a response, turned her head to look at Lizu, and she found that Lizu had walked ashore and was squatting on the ground. "Hey, these are footprints. Haha." Harley Quinn walked ashore quickly. The weather seemed good for the demon fangs. The footprints remained muddy in the sea fog and were not washed away by the sea water. La 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 la. Harley Quinn ran forward happily. Her two-color hair was like the different colored wings of an elf, shaking with the wind. Harley Quinn ran happily after the footprints, and Lizu just slowly hung behind her. She fell in love with the feeling of being a detective. The footprints disappeared halfway, and they also came to a strange place. Abandoned diving equipment was placed on the ground. "We want to dive?" Harley Quinn pointed excitedly at the completely dark sea surface after the sun went down. The dark sea surface was like a big mouth, intending to swallow all the lives that approached. The disaster of the Titania expedition team happened in the Demon Fangs. The crazy Albert Throgmorton also escaped from here alone. There were also people on the shore who believed that the monster that made people crazy also left from here with the Titania. Diving into the seabed is the only choice. "What's wrong with you?" Harley Quinn noticed that something was wrong with Lizu standing next to her. Lizu lowered his head, but his shoulders were shaking. He raised his head and opened his arms, as if ready to embrace the dark sea. "So, this is what it feels like to regain feelings. You're back." Harley Quinn stood on tiptoe and pounced on Lizu, hanging on his neck. "Next time I won't give you an injection. You've really been so unromantic during this period." She acted like a little lover. Only a lunatic would believe in her sudden love. Lizu pushed Harley Quinn away and shook his head. No. Next time if I don't have time for an injection, then." He raised his right hand and pointed his index finger at his head. Bang. "Really? You're so nice to me." She giggled, a very innocent smile. "Sweetheart, what should we do next?" Harley Quinn looked around. There were many oxygen cylinders here, but no deep diving equipment. Of course, to the bottom of the sea. Lee Su grinned, and the prop box fell from the sky and landed at his feet. In the box, besides the full bottles of Persian potion, there were only a few toys. Pistol, hawk-girl, katana. Oh no, I forgot to prepare the diving suit. I'm so emotionless, so I'm always so unprepared. Lee Su still had the mood to blame himself for suppressing his emotions just now. Footsteps were heard in the distance. Here they come, delivering something to us. It seems I'm still very smart. Lee Su restrained the exaggerated smile on his face. Bruce, you bastard. It was Charles Reed, who rushed over with a full set of diving equipment, and he also noticed Harley Quinn, woman. Harley Quinn stood with Lee Su, which instantly confirmed all the guesses in Charles Reed's mind. He stared. You are also investigating this matter, right? Harley Quinn swung her yo-yo and walked slowly towards Reed. Reed did not regard Harley Quinn as a threat at all. He was a Navy man, and after working as a private detective, he was surrounded by danger all the time. A girl playing with a yo-yo and having a hot body, it was not enough to attract Reed's attention. He was only looking at the Bruce Wayne in front of him. He already had sufficient evidence to show that this person had the same goal as himself. He only needed to guard against this man with a gun as good as a ghost. If the interests of both parties conflicted, he must find a way to subdue the other party. Lee Su raised his finger and bit his finger. This town is shouting at me across two worlds. Now it's time to respond to it shouting. You also have that weird dream. You will also have hallucinations, right? Reed seemed to have found a kindred spirit. He asked excitedly and wanted to get closer to Lee Su, but his consciousness suddenly dimmed. Don't kill him. Lee Su looked at Charles Reed, who was knocked to the ground by Harley Quinn's elbow and just walked over to pick up the diving suit. He is our friend. We should be friendly to friends. Remember, there is an old saying, rely on friends when you go out. Look, isn't he delivering the things? You are so right. When I escaped from Arkham before, it was also those friends who helped me block bullets. Harley Quinn nodded and agreed with Lee Su's words. With the help of Harley Quinn, Lee Su completely hid in the yellow diving suit. He carried the oxygen tank and walked to the deep diving point with difficulty, grabbing the rope. Wait for me. Harley Quinn ran over and hugged Lee Su tightly. Are you ready? When Lee Su spoke, the mist blurred the hood through the mist. Yeah. Harley Quinn nodded excitedly. The two of them jumped on tiptoe at the same time and dived into the sea. Under the sea, gurgle as Lee Su breathed. The exhaled air was gathered by the seawater and pushed to swim above his head. He shook the flashlight vigorously, and the old battery shook clang, clang, and a beam of strong light came on with difficulty. In this deep sea where light could not reach, he could finally see things within a dozen meters. After holding the Harley Quinn toy in his right hand tightly and making sure it would not slip out, Lee Su moved his legs with difficulty. Under the sea, a beam of light passed through the reefs and corals. A yellow figure staggered down the downhill road with rolling mud and rocks. Boom. He rolled for 7 or 8 times before he stopped. Lee Su panted with his mouth wide open, but he was getting happier. He was about to get closer to the truth. The deeper he went into the sea, the clearer the madness in his mind told him this. Boom. On the right, a mountain was hit by a huge object. The light slowly moved over, and a huge tentacle wrapped around the top of the mountain. The suction cup was like a small house, occupying Lee Su's entire field of vision. Gudang. Lee Su swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The whole person was stuffed into the diving suit, so his expression could not be seen. A bottle of oxygen bottle that was pierced by a knife was lying across the path. He nodded. The deep sea environment made it difficult for him to speak to himself. The torn diving suit, helmet, oxygen tube, flashlight were like road signs, leading Lee Su forward. But it looked more like a group of people deliberately tore these things apart, destroying them as they ran. Under these tractions, Lee Su soon reached his destination. The madness in his mind also whispered to him. This is it. Thank you Zie Geos Hangban for 2 100 starting coins. Reader 11597414176896491524 for 2 100 starting coins. Thank you Jiang who I'm here for 100 starting coins. Thank you 29 for 500 starting coins and 5 consecutive 100 starting coins. I have been very busy in the past 2 days, but most of the things have been done. I have been interrupted many times recently and updated less. I'm very sorry. I'm ashamed of the rewards and votes, as well as the friends who have collected them. Now I will resume and maintain stable updates. Chapter 81 God. Undersea Cave, a relic of an ancient civilization lost in the deep sea. Crash! Exclamation mark. The hand wrapped in the diving suit tore through the water surface. It was Lizu. He crossed the underwater canyon and came to the cave with difficulty. There were wooden sticks everywhere, and incandescent lamps were tied to the sticks. The battery-powered lights could keep on for a week. In the narrow, damp, and somewhat stuffy cave, the uninterrupted light illuminated this place abandoned by the sun. There was a man waiting on the shore, who seemed to be responsible for welcoming Lizu. Judging from his clothes, he should be a member of the expedition team. He had a badge on his chest that proved that he was a university researcher. But this expedition member's movements were a little strange. Our god of the curtain. The man squatted on the ground, put his hands on his head, and jumped. Is he playing a rabbit? Maybe. This is not funny, but it looks even more weird in this gloomy space. The god attached to me. Hehe. He was still laughing, and his tone was very strange. The god who chose me as a sacrifice. Endless crazy laughter. Lizu quickly took off his diving suit, took off his helmet, removed his oxygen tank, and threw it aside. He glanced at the madman squatting on the ground with some disdain, and walked inside quickly. He had seen many madmen, and he could not get any useful information from them. Lizu had no intention of continuing to talk to him. What came into view was a corpse, lying horizontally under the lamp. Fish gills had grown on both sides of the face. This was not the first time Lizu had seen the Innsmouth man, but every time he saw this kind of subhuman creature that obviously looked like a mixture of fish and humans, he would feel interesting. He wanted to know if there was reproductive isolation between fish and humans. The corpse of the Innsmouth man, wearing a dark windbreaker, had blood pooling behind his head. The water drops falling from his head were knocking on the pool of blood that had already solidified. In the pocket of the Innsmouth man's corpse was a mysterious knife with strange symbols engraved on it, like a sacrificial item. There were also mysterious symbols and strange eyes. Lizu unceremoniously lowered his head and picked up the pendant decorated with strange mysterious symbols. His interest in the corpse ended there. Not far from the corpse was the wall, except for a small path that continued to go inwards under the guidance of the light. The entire cave that he had just seen was completely revealed in front of Lizu. It was not only the man who had just muttered that had gone crazy. Beyond the light that illuminated the way ahead, on the stone steps dripping with cold water, there stood a man shaking his head and a man sitting. They were both members of the expedition team. The standing man's illness seemed to be much milder, at least much better than the man next to him who was shouting and laughing ha ha wow wow. There was a strange platform on the small platform, and the things on it had been taken away. I came a step too late. Lizu felt a little regretful. He was sure that the Titania expedition team came to the Devil's Fang for this thing, and he was also sure that this thing had a lot to do with him. But now, it was nowhere to be found. Listen. He's coming. The one who carries the sacred. Take me away, give birth to me. Ask the gods. The man who shook his head widened his eyes, but there was madness flashing in his turbid pupils. God Lizu shrugged. Our eyes. The first, the second, the third, all opened in the bath of glory. You have seen all kinds of things, but still have not glimpsed the Holy Virgin sleeping here. The crazy man continued to speak, and the obscure words were like some kind of sacrificial song, praising something. Lizu had seen this scene many times, since he came to Oakmont. Every person who is about to go crazy will fall into the crazy worship of God. Monsters with multiple limbs, monsters that tear their own faces, etc. are all worshipped by believers. I don't know what kind of God he believes in. I'm worried about your aesthetics, Lizu replied casually. Wake up, stubborn man. Take away his skin and bones. Take away my faith. May the gods bless you. This unexpectedly aroused the other party's anger. God, be our eyes. Let us see the stars in the distance. The crazy man on the side also covered his ears and screamed. The bonfire in the distance was swaying, telling Lizu that he should not stay here any longer. After saying goodbye to the two crazy gentlemen, Lizu quickened his pace and ran inside. After walking through a dark period, the light shining towards the abyss in the cave became a torch that pulled Lizu forward. The first thing that came into view was a strange statue. It was 2 or 3 stories high, and it was the most blurry statue Lizu had ever seen. The statue vaguely looked like a person. It was curled up and squatted, with an octopus head, and the octopus tentacles at the mouth were swinging wantonly. He had a pair of broken, seemingly underdeveloped bat wings. Just staring at the statue, the trembling feeling of looking directly at the mysterious black hole, as if the scattered nebula was pushed aside, came over him without explanation. World Exploration degree 5%. When Lizu came back to his senses, the statue was still a statue, but he had gained more things. And, a little bit of crazy laughter. Ha 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 ha. Lizu turned and left with a belly laugh. He couldn't stay here for too long. On the stone steps, the man who was muttering to himself was still shaking. The movement of him holding his head was very similar to the monster with a torn face he had seen before. He was also infected by madness, so who could be sure that he would not change into one of them? Bang! The prop box fell from the sky. Lizu took out 2 bottles of Boxian potion and stabbed the man. The man stopped talking to himself, and his expression was very calm. I'm Private Detective Bruce Wayne. Mr. Slogmorton asked me to investigate the disappearance of the expedition team. I think you should be able to give me some explanation. Lizu smiled at the other party, but unfortunately he didn't get more facial expressions in response. Although Persian could not eliminate the mental madness, after the physical madness was calmed down, the right to speak and the ability to think would be fully restored. It was like being buried by the collapsing snow mountain, hiding alone at the bottom, struggling to support. The man who barely had reason looked at Lizu calmly. We found this place, the lost ancient temple. Professor Doe found the strange artifact, and she went crazy. A group of Innsmouth people have been following us. When we found the important items, they rushed out. We fought back but only killed one of them. They kidnapped Professor Doe, and we were also affected by crazy hallucinations. Well. Lizu nodded hastily. Obviously he didn't care about the development of the matter. The white-aped Throgmorton obviously didn't like the Innsmouth people, or it was difficult to find a part of the people who liked them in the whole of Oakmont. There couldn't be this group of freaks in the expedition team, even if they had gills, and looked very suitable for swimming. Lizu just opened his mouth to ask more about God, and the man had already covered his head and muttered to himself again. Bozine couldn't suppress a person whose brain had completely collapsed. Reed might know more, like God. Lizu put on a diving suit and jumped into the water. He was just a step late. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82 Innsmouth Ornament. Charles Reed opened his eyes with difficulty. The drizzle penetrated the mist and fell on his body, and his body began to become cold. His body had already been completely soaked. He rubbed his aching neck with his right hand and supported his knees with his left hand to climb up with difficulty. Under the dark clouds, the dark sea water was like the open bloody mouth of a demon, and the small island he was on was like a demon's fangs. Charlie, little Charlie, the voice came from a distance. Reed turned his head and saw the woman in bright colors, dragging a bulky guy in a diving suit floating in the water. Damn Bruce Wayne. This was not the first time Charles Reed called the weird yellow man like this. Compared with the other party's detective identity, he wanted to call him a despicable bastard. Having said that, he still stepped forward to help pull the two people ashore. Sweetheart, he just fainted. There is a big octopus. The clown girl gestured slowly, but Charles obviously did not believe this crazy woman. Reed, who knew Bruce Wayne was powerful, never thought that he would faint easily. His miraculous abilities had long surpassed the scope of normal people. There must be something under the sea. Now Charles Reed decided to wait for Bruce Wayne to wake up and find out the situation. Squeaky, the wind swung the window wildly. A strong fishy wind blew. The paintings hanging on the wall danced. There was a risk of falling at any time. Huolala. Bang. The books placed on the bedside were flipped quickly by the wind, and after turning the last page, they fell to the ground. The person lying on the bed suddenly opened his eyes, sat up, and sat straight. This yellow man with a bit of decadence and heavy dark bags under his eyes was of course Lizu, who dived into the deep sea not long ago. Yawned. He stretched his body, much more comfortable being tortured by those weird dreams and strange hallucinations, coupled with not sleeping for a long time. This period of time lying in bed has brought him some energy. Lizu jumped out of bed nimbly, barefoot. He looked energetic, not crazy, with a calm smile on his face from beginning to end. This was Lizu, the innermost appearance, after stripping off his madness and crazy smile. The sea breeze continued to blow into the room. Lizu glanced at the strange paintings on the wall, and looked out the window. The gurgling sound had been ringing for a long time, like thunder, but there was no trace of lightning in the dark sky. Gurgling, the sound did not stop, and it sounded like snoring. Boom. A meteorite fell from the sky, smashing half of Oakmont, and standing on the ruins. Half of the meteorite was hidden in the dark clouds above, and the other half was revealed in front of Lizu. Wow. Lizu did not hesitate to show his exaggerated expression. Then, he grinned. This time it was his spontaneous crazy laugh. Leaning out and looking out, you can see more clearly. Squinting his eyes, enduring the gusts of fishy wind, he finally saw what was standing in front of him. Huge eyes like a lighthouse. Nostrils as deep as a black hole. Spiky teeth like a man-eating shark. Cracked and opening and closing gills. It was the huge Innsmouth fish face. The huge fish face stared at Lizu through the window. He could swallow Lizu completely into his mouth by just opening his mouth. In fact, he was about to do so. On the other hand, Lizu, who was standing in front of the window, opened his arms and laughed loudly in the violent fishy wind, not taking it seriously at all. The Innsmouth giant face suddenly retracted its breath. The strong wind contracted, and Lizu was sucked into its mouth. It was like a black hole in the starry sky, swallowing everything. Sweetheart, are you awake? Squeak. Lizu opened his eyes and turned his head in the direction of the sound. Joker Girl Yo-Yo was sitting on the window, swinging the yo-yo in her hand. The weather outside was just right. It was noon, and there was the aroma of beer. It was just a dream. Squeak pop. Harley Quinn put away her yo-yo, nimbly jumped out of the window, and hopped in front of Lizu. Charlie was taken away by a gorilla, and he asked us to wait here for him to come back. His expression at that time was really scary. What if we run around again, and he shoots us? That must be very fun. Lizu replied. The two looked at each other, and then, laughed. The room was filled with the smell of old rotten wood. The creaking windows had long been eroded by the sea breeze. Merry Christmas. Harley Quinn hummed a Christmas song with a strange tone and hopped downstairs. It was still summer, but she didn't need a reason to hum. As soon as the two walked to the first floor, they immediately became the focus of everyone. Strangers, you must abide by the rules here. Don't mess with the cabinets. You are making too much noise. The ferocious Innsmouth man pointed at the two people, not hiding his disgust at all. Sweetheart? Harley Quinn looked at Lizu aggrievedly. They were noisy enough, but they really didn't move the cupboards. Is there anything to eat? Lizu completely ignored the Innsmouth man and Harley Quinn, walked to the table and sat down. I want chocolate cauldron cake, chocolate frog, a glass of butterbeer, and Yorkshire pudding. Thank you. He ordered his own food, and waited for the food to be served like a gentleman, but he only waited for the hotel lobby to fall into a quiet atmosphere. Lizu turned his head in a strange way and looked around. What's wrong? Another lunatic. The Innsmouth boss looked even more unhappy. He turned his head and cursed, and ignored Lizu. What did you order just now? Chocolate flavored frogs, or frog flavored chocolate? Harley Quinn pulled out a chair and sat in front of Lizu, asking curiously. She was very curious about the unheard of magical food. I thought that, as long as the bar was weird enough, there would be such things. Lizu was a little disappointed, raised his hand and said, please give me a few things to fill my stomach. Thank you. He lowered his requirements. 2 burnt baked potatoes, dry toast, and 2 beer glasses were thrown on the table. Enjoy your meal. The Innsmouth man obviously didn't want to provoke the madman. He muttered, if you weren't brought by the damned Throgmorton's men, I would definitely throw you into the sea. Wait. Lizu stopped him and bent down to pick up the things on the ground. You dropped your things. Oh, yes, this is mine. The Innsmouth man stretched out his hands, intending to hold the thing, but his hands stopped halfway. He turned around with disgust. This is not mine. When he bent down, the sign hanging around his neck fell. Exactly the same pendant with strange eyes printed on it. The Innsmouth man quickly walked to the back kitchen, fearing that Lizu would catch up and ask him something. Lizu stood up and walked out of the hotel with the burnt and dry toast in his mouth. Honey, we haven't finished eating yet. Do you want to go somewhere else? I want to eat chocolate dolls. No, I just thought of a better place. Lizu looked at the pendant in his hand and said meaningfully, it seems that this group of Innsmouth people have a big conspiracy, and they know each other. Are we going to be superheroes? Harley Quinn asked excitedly. Yes, superheroes. Great. Harley Quinn cheered. Thank you Wang Fei for 6 rewards of 100 starting coins and 500 starting coins. Thank you Ziyi Geo Zeng Band for 2 rewards of 100 starting coins. Thank you book friends. 201910041210502229 for the reward of 100 starting coins. I'm a little embarrassed by the rewards. It's really updated. There will be updates in the evening. Chapter 83 Dagon. At the Devil's Reef Hotel, the hopping Harley Quinn followed Lizu closely, and the two merged into the crowd in a manner that was out of tune with the townspeople. The door was pushed open, and a man in a yellow suit and yellow leather shoes walked out of the hotel. The brown lenses reflected the light. He was Johans, the local resident who invited Charles Reed to Oakmont. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, and his eyes were completely blocked by the lenses. No one could see what he was thinking. It was just that he was very interested in Lizu and Harley Quinn. University? Yao Hao bent over and stared at the house number in the distance. She didn't care that her raised hips outlined an extremely sexy body curve and how many people's attention she attracted. After leaving the Devil's Reef, the two followed the road signs to the university in Oakmont. The sun was burning, and the sun was scorching. Many passers-by were talking about it. This was a rare sunny day after the flood, and they were a little uncomfortable with the sun. Crossing the overgrown road, we came to the main road of Oakmont University. Here gathered people dressed as Inuit, police, believers with strange symbols tattooed on them, college students studying. Even in advanced institutions, there were no shortage of weirdos. Are we going to school? Harley Quinn put her hands on the pergola and stood on tiptoe to look around. Of course, to pray for knowledge, we have to go to the place where the most knowledge is stored. Oakmont University Library. Lizu and Harley Quinn stopped at the door, and they slowly raised their heads and looked up at the tall building. I love reading the most. Harley Quinn clasped her hands tightly against her chest, her face full of nostalgia. Reading is a good habit. Lizu had never known about Harley Quinn's experience in the Flashpoint world and knew nothing about what happened before she was assimilated and influenced by the Joker. Maybe she was really a top student before. The two walked into the library. This town has never lacked obsessed people who are obsessed with something and can't extricate themselves. The students in the library are like this. Lizu can be sure that this is the first time he has seen so many people who are thirsty for knowledge. The folds of the books seem to have black holes, attracting their attention. What do you want to learn? Harley Quinn really looked like an excellent student. She deliberately lowered her voice to ask, so as not to disturb other students' studies. I think it should be historical documents or religious studies, mainly to find this symbol. Lizu took out the strange ornament of the Innsmouth people. There was a strange eye carved on it, like some kind of totem, which was difficult to understand, but people would not believe that this picture was drawn casually. I'm very good at looking up information. Harley Quinn took the ornament, held it in front of her eyes, and looked at it for a long time, before continuing the next looking up information action. Bang! Gunshot. Harley Quinn actually pulled out a pistol and shot at the top of her head. Help. Throughout the library, the students who were obsessed with reading were frightened by the gunshots, dropped the books they were immersed in the previous second, and began to flee. Bang, bang, bang. Harley Quinn fired 3 shots in a row to make sure everyone was quiet. Does anyone know what the fish-faced man carries? Harley Quinn asked while holding the strange symbol. No one spoke. Bang, Harley Quinn wrinkled her nose unhappily. Why is there no one answering? I hate awkward atmospheres. Can't you be more cheerful and active? Harley Quinn couldn't stand the silence. Yo-yo. Lizu was a little distressed. Although this seemed like his style, he saw Harley Quinn doing the same thing, and he actually believed that she was a female academic bully just now. Now he was having a headache. Bullets were never spared, and the atmosphere of fear filled the library. The atmosphere was condensed, and Harley Quinn was about to raise the gun again. I know. A bald man stood out from the crowd, holding his right hand high, and finally came out of the crowd with difficulty. He was in his 40s, with an ordinary appearance, but a bright head that looked full of wisdom. What do you want to know? I'm George Cavendish, a university professor, he introduced himself. There were too many crazy guys in Oakmont, and George knew that he needed to appease the two of them to avoid bloodshed. Lizu pressed Harley Quinn's shoulder and pulled her behind him to block her next move. He walked out and bowed to George Cavendish gentlemanly. We just want to ask some questions about the people of Innsmouth. Professor George's eyes changed a little at that moment, and he looked at Lizu carefully. We can find a place to talk slowly. Professor George walked out first, and Lizu followed. Instead, Harley Quinn stayed and raised her index finger to the students, who were still in shock. Shh, we are supervillains. Remember not to notify the police, but to notify the superheroes. Bruce Wayne, you bastard. You ran away again. I knew I shouldn't leave them alone here. Bang. Charles Reed pushed open the door of the Evil Reef Hotel angrily. He stood on the street and saw the police running forward quickly. What happened? He stopped the police. Now Oakmont was in a strange atmosphere. Every case must be related. Charles Reed thought so. He would never let go of any clues. Who made Lizu and his partner disappear again? After working for a long time, he still did nothing. The police stopped and found that it was Charles. Although he was unhappy, he still said, a man and a woman broke into the university and kidnapped Professor George. Bruce, this bastard. How dare you kidnap a university professor? Almost as soon as he heard a man and a woman, Charles was sure that the one who could do such a thing must be Lizu and his partner. Oakmont University, the second floor of the faculty office. One office was marked with George Cavendish, and under maintenance the door of another office was half open. Looking through the crack of the door, you can see the luxurious decoration inside, full of British style. In the lobby, there is a simple desk. On it is a nameplate, George Cavendish. If it weren't for you guys, I would never come back to this damn place before they prepare a better office. I must fight for my own rights to the end. He roared at Lizu and the others. Professor George adjusted his emotions quickly. This is the special mark of the Innsmouth people. Dagon what? In the legendary town of Innsmouth, the deep ones will come ashore to induce humans to get pregnant, and the monsters born have strange looks, which are called Innsmouth looks. Professor George was calm. When the Innsmouth people grow up, they will shed their human appearance and become fish-like deep ones. They believe in the father god Dagon. Professor George looked up at Lizu. Dagon. Lizu looked at the strange ornaments in his hand. This was the first time he heard of God, and he heard an exact name. Dagon. I can tell you more, but you have to help me with something. There are some things in the basement of the school pharmacy. I want you to help me solve it. Chapter 84 Interlude. George turned his eyes to the gun in Harley Quinn's hand, and then to Lizu. With pleasure. Lizu seemed to have really forgotten the purpose of coming to the university, and actually nodded obediently. Harley Quinn, who was standing beside him, held a gun in her left hand, and swung a yo-yo in her right hand, and had already run in the direction of George's finger. Her figure twisting her waist and running quickly disappeared from the sight of the two people. 1 minute later, bang, 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 continuous gunshots, and chuckle crazy laughter. Sweetheart, inside, it's all that stuff. Harley Quinn jumped out. Seeing that her clothes were neat, the battle just now should have been easy. She gestured with her hands and feet, trying to describe the appearance of the things in the basement, but judging from the reaction on the scene, her gesture should have failed. That must be very interesting. Lizu recalled the feeling when he fell into madness, but Harley Quinn did not seem to be troubled by these things. Solved. George looked at the two people doubtfully. He looked a little disappointed now, but in the disappointment, there was a surprise that was difficult to conceal. His expression was completely unnoticed by the two even weirder guys, or maybe they had already noticed it, but they just pretended not to know and didn't care. If Charles Reed was here, he might be able to use his powerful detective experience to tell that Professor George only thought he was disguised well. The students in the school had already run away when they heard the first gunshot in the library. Only 3 people were left in the eastern half of Oakmont University campus. The leaves were falling, and the air was bleak. I'll go and see. George decided to go down and see for himself. His trembling chin and trembling lips had already betrayed him. He knew what was locked up underground, but he still walked down resolutely. After a long time, accompanied by the sound of vomiting, Professor George came out. Let's go. The police are coming. George walked with his legs weak against the wall. He glanced at the 2 people and found that the man and woman had calm expressions, and there was no fear of being chased by the entire Oakmont police force. Instead, they were discussing a place. When it comes to madness, the 2 people from Gotham always have endless things to discuss. After all, it's like home. Arkham? There are also many strange things happening there. George walked for more than 10 steps, and his nausea was relieved. He continued, after the flood, many strange things happened, and many monsters were born. My. His expression changed, and he swallowed the words that were pushed to his throat, and then changed his mouth and continued. I have communicated with professors from many universities through letters, including Arkham University. Many strange things have also happened there, but we have no other way to deal with them except exchanging letters. There is also Arkham here? That must be very interesting. Harley Quinn exclaimed. Innsmouth, Arkham. Lizu looked at the world exploration level that had reached 5%. This also confirmed his initial guess that Oakmont was only a corner of the world. If you want to completely unravel the mystery of this world and understand why the madness of this world summoned you here across 2 worlds, you must not just stay in Oakmont to find the answer. The chance is too slim. George led the way in front, walking hurriedly, as if he had made some kind of decision. After turning a corner, George heard the footsteps behind him and turned around to find that he was only followed by the decadent man. The strange woman with hot curves and brightly colored clothes had long disappeared. We pray that she will not be caught. George only thought that the clown girl left and acted alone. We also pray that no one will mess with her, he added in a low voice. A woman who relied on a pistol to fight a monster would definitely become the most difficult criminal in this town. George was relieved that she left halfway. He didn't want to stay with a crazy woman, even if she looked sexy and beautiful. More beautiful than his wife. In the small town of Oakmont in the early 20th century, the architecture was the most characteristic of the era, with tall and thin apartment buildings and windows with partition columns. Except for a few villas that looked like small courtyards that obviously belonged to rich people, the difference between other houses was not too big. Architectural aesthetics was in a transition period between change and conservatism, and the embryonic form of architectural aesthetic development had already appeared. George's house was in a crowded apartment building. The 2 stood at the elevator in trance on the first floor for a while. The elevator is broken again. Let's take the stairs. George seemed to have adapted to this situation a long time ago. He led the way in front, and the 2 went up to the 2nd floor. There was a baby stroller at the door of the room on the right. Ah. George sighed, pushed the baby stroller away, and then took out the key to turn the door. The room was very spacious and obviously dusty. George didn't look like someone who would clean. Lizu sat at the table and grabbed the cold toast on the table and stuffed it into his mouth without hesitation. It takes physical strength to turn a person back into a toy. Professor George took off his coat and hung it on the hanger. According to my understanding, they called Dagon the Father God. He began to explain the information he had obtained. Dagon, his appearance may be similar to that of the Innsmouth people. No one knows his true appearance. It is very likely that the name Dagon was spelled out with similar words, because the Innsmouth people could not pronounce that pronunciation. Dagon, many similar names. Dagon, the Holy Virgin, the god of fertility, and the monster with an octopus head and bat wings. Lizu racked his brains, but found that it was just a simple statistics. His brain was like a stick stuck in a Maltose barrel, unable to move. Just recalling these strange existences exceeded the computing limit of his brain. It seems that Professor Deo and the things in the cave are in the hands of the Innsmouth people. The next target has been determined. You have to do me another favor. Now the whole ointment is in an unprecedented crisis. Me. Professor George's words were blocked at the corner of his mouth. Lizu had already opened the window and jumped downstairs with a somersault. Hey. When Professor George rushed to the window, Lizu's figure had long disappeared. That's right. He is going to become a wanted criminal now. How can he help me? George slapped his head in annoyance. His eyes became firm. I can only continue to poison. Lizu just crossed the street and turned the corner, and a hand pressed on his shoulder. Bruce, you're a real bastard. It was Charles Reed, who followed. Lizu shrugged his shoulders with a calm expression of oh, you caught me. Didn't I ask you to wait for me at the hotel? Reed turned his head left and right, but didn't see Harley Quinn, so he didn't ask any more questions. He knew that Lizu was a bit magical. Of course, he was even more angry that Lizu had escaped again. If it wasn't for his good luck, he would definitely lose the whereabouts of this guy, making everything useless, including the private room he bought with a bullet. How are you, Reed? Lizu didn't care at all, and still had the mind to ask hello. It's terrible. My cooperation with Throgmorton has reached a deadlock, because you and I couldn't enter the Devil's Fang, and now it has become a police blockade. I didn't get the key information and evidence. Throgmorton just gave me a new task. Now you have to come with me to solve this trouble first, and then go to see Throgmorton. Reed didn't plan to explain slowly. Gorilla face? Lizu didn't struggle. In this small town, the big families are the local tyrants, and the White Ape Throgmorton is one of the big families. Yes, it's about a mirror. I found some information. Of course, you just need to know that we have to go to the shelter now. Lizu looked at the police trotting over from a distance and nodded. I look forward to investigating the case with you, Reed. Thank you to Nyan for the 2000 starting coins and 1000 starting coins to rewards. Chapter 85 Dr. Grant. Hi. Looking at the policeman coming over, Reed raised his hand calmly and greeted. What happened again? The daily life of Oakman Town is a never-ending case. It seems that the interpersonal relationships of the White Ape Mr. Robert Throgmorton have allowed Reed to know many key and important characters in this town. A shooting occurred at Throgmorton University. The policeman stopped in front of the two people, mainly staring at Reed. From his eyes, it can be seen that he doesn't like outsiders. It's a man and a woman, two outsiders. So, have you two been together? He looked at Lizu, glared at him with disgust, and then looked back at Reed. Obviously, this policeman is a racist, and his disgust for people of color is already written on his face. Charles, don't we still have to investigate Mr. Throgmorton's case? It seems that time is running out. Lizu on the side interrupted and asked. Hearing about Throgmorton, the policeman restrained his expression. Fortunately, you are two men, outsiders. Otherwise, even if you are the big shots in front of Mr. Slogmorton, you have to go with us. The police turned around and hurried away. The smell of people with colored skin must make him uncomfortable. A noble racist. See you later. Reed raised his hand. He also hated the other party's attitude. When the police disappeared from his sight, Reed turned around, and his listless eyes also perked up a little. He stared at Lizu. You shot at the university? As a detective, the clues just now were enough for Reed to perceive the key information. A man and a woman, outsiders, recklessly fired. Reed even rehearsed the development of the incident in his mind. They must have laughed at that time. The kind of laughter with their heads raised. Reed dared to pat his chest to confirm his guess. Well, Yao Yao is a little naughty. Lizu did not deny it. Damn, that's a university. Many children of big families in this town go to school there. Reed suddenly stopped. He found that he really had no way to deal with this companion he didn't know. Whatever you are investigating, tell me all the information you have now. Reed was tough for once, and he thought this was a good opportunity. In exchange for useful information, it is far more meaningful than to blame Lizu for someone he doesn't know. He knew that Lizu was having a hard time in Oakmont at this time, and this was a bargaining chip he could take out. As you wish, Lizu shrugged. He would not be stingy with any information and intelligence. The sanatorium is located in the Shire area of Oakman Town. The terrain here is higher and it is separated from the flooded streets. With Reed leading the way, Lizu walked into the sanatorium like a foreign tourist, looking around leisurely. Pushing open the door on the first floor, what came into view was a damp counter. The black lady in a long windbreaker half leaned on the counter, unconsciously flipping through the yellowed registration form in her hand, but her eyes had already glanced at Lizu and Reed at the door. "I'll go check it out. Don't wander around." Reed had already gotten the information he wanted on the way here, but in order to prevent outsiders from being hated in this closed town, Reed decided to keep Lizu with him for the time being. Lizu replied casually, and he wandered around the first floor with nothing to do. "The sanatorium is more like a mental hospital," Reed said on the way, "that this place mainly takes care of people with mental disorders after the flood. Some people have strange dreams and see hallucinations. The symptoms are exactly the same as Lizu and Reed, but their brains are not strong enough, which leads to being driven crazy by hallucinations. As for what Reed said about the reason why he came here to investigate the case, Lizu didn't write down a word. A loud laugh came from the corner of the first floor. It was a man squatting on the ground, laughing with his head raised and his hands raised above his head. "God of fertility, disorder, and chaos, eternal light." Lizu walked over curiously and squatted down. His smile allowed him to blend into the environment of the sanatorium without any obstacles. "Who are you talking about?" Its voice is indescribable, its appearance is indescribable, and its name cannot be mentioned. The crazy man looked around cautiously, as if something in the darkness was staring at him and would pounce on him and tear him to pieces at any time. Of course, of course." The man's voice became smaller and smaller, and his eyes became mysterious. Under Lizu's inquiring gaze, the man slowly turned around, his head against the corner of the wall, and there was no movement, only heavy breathing. "Nice hide and seek. Those things will definitely not see you." Lizu stood up with his knees. "When did the illusion start?" The voice sounded familiar. A doctor in a white coat, with a face as pale as a vampire, was seeing a patient. The front desk doctor of St. Mary's Hospital. Lizu didn't expect to meet him here. "The hallucinations come from parasites. I sacrificed most of my sleep time to study this thing. Look." The doctor took out a bottle of medicine from his pocket. This thing looked very familiar to Lizu. It is said that the medicine can suppress mental hallucinations and headaches. Of course, it will only aggravate the condition after taking it. As long as you take this thing, it will definitely alleviate your condition. The patient took the medicine doubtfully. He drank it all in one gulp. 2 seconds later, haha, screaming, running wildly, banging his head against the wall, and finally fainted and fell to the ground. "No, it shouldn't be." The doctor rubbed his head and was very puzzled. "I have adjusted the dosage. It seems that you failed again." The doctor turned around and saw Lizu standing against the wall. "It's you. You really helped me a lot." The pale face forced a smile. "Stay here. I can finally understand their condition well, and soon I can find a formula to eradicate it. Eliminate their parasites." "What happened?" The carriage drivers who heard the collision rushed over and found a patient banging his head against the wall. They quickly pounced on him. "Dr. Grant, hand it over." A nurse walked towards the doctor and stretched out his hand. This is the result of my research. Hey, you watch out." Dr. Grant was reluctant to take it out, but he couldn't get away from the nurse and finally handed over the medicine obediently. "Where did you get all this stuff?" the nurse muttered and took away the patient who was banging his head against the wall. "Are you a patient here?" Lizu was speechless. Things always develop in unpredictable directions. Dr. Grant nodded and walked back. Dr. Grant is obviously not a crazy patient, but for some reason, he prefers to stay here. "Detective, if you have time, maybe we can cooperate." Dr. Grant stopped and stared at Lizu. Lizu was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "At your service anytime." Chapter 86 Underground Monster. Dr. Grant took another step and walked towards a fisherman who was sitting on the ground, shaking his head. Some time ago, Albert Slogmorton died unexpectedly. He was one of the people who picked up Albert on the beach. Dr. Grant introduced. After the incident, these participants were still conscious, but after a short period of time, their spirits collapsed. As he spoke, Grant found another bottle of potion from somewhere. He pulled out the stopper, quietly approached the fisherman, and poured the potion into his mouth. The fisherman did not resist and drank it obediently. It seems that the reason for the mental collapse of these poor people has been found, Lizu said jokingly. The fisherman's reaction after drinking the potion was not intense. His spirit had collapsed, and he would not be more abnormal, no matter what kind of illusion he saw. It seems that the effect of the medicine has a probabilistic rejection with the human body. Dr. Grant took out a small notebook from somewhere and wrote down his own observation log of the potion experiment. I believe that this observation log does not contain any reference value while maintaining the wonderful content. For 2 minutes, Dr. Grant put away his pen after the scribbled notes filled a page with wavy lines. After the Oakmont flood, the largest mall closed down. At that time, a robber wanted to steal something, but encountered some troubles during the theft. Dr. Grant turned his head and stared at Lizu with bloodshot yellow eyes. He encountered a huge sea monster and did not survive. The problem is that the doors and windows of the building are all locked. How did such a big monster get in? In Oakmont, everyone is weird enough. The clues brought by those who are curious about the unknown are what Lizu needs most to explore this world. Dr. Grant is a curious person who is on the verge of madness. The police couldn't go in to take a look. Rumors can arouse people's curiosity. On the contrary, Reed's mirror story makes people drowsy. He just knows that the case Reed is handling is related to the White Ape family. Police, that place is too weird. Pistols are hard to use. Dr. Grant's expression also said it all. The police were reluctant to wade into the muddy water, especially after the flood, when monsters appeared frequently. He stared at Lizu. Only you can. Lizu left a deep enough impression on him that night. No one was willing to wade into the muddy water without enough chips, but Lizu had a reason to go. Restaurant. The hunched old woman came over and squeezed into the conversation between the two. When the two people's eyes were focused on her, she only made a heavy sound, and her dry smile was even more terrifying. Turbid eyes, without focus, can't be connected with the smile. I guess there is only madness in her brain now. The old woman walked away slowly, mumbling in silence. Dr. Grant took over and nodded. Yes, there is a restaurant that people are afraid of. Of course, it's not because the food is so bad, but because no woman who went there came back. And the police couldn't find anything inside. She is in contact with one of the missing girls. What she told me when her mind was still clear was even more bizarre. There was a jumping monster there. Dr. Grant didn't seem to want to mention this. Maybe in his opinion, these words are full of loopholes. How could an old woman avoid a jumping monster and walk in front of him unscathed? Even if she is an old woman, she is still a woman. She shouldn't have walked back. If you have time, you can also go and have a look. From the tone, he didn't recommend doing so. Lizu was drowsy at the long sentence with a clear British accent. He woke up when he heard the key information. Aha, monster. Dr. Grant was very busy. He had many medicines hidden on him, including a stethoscope, or thermometer, etc. The whole nursing home became his largest experimental site. Lizu walked to the second floor. In the corridor, a man in a white coat was graffitiing on the wall. It was a huge, black, unknown mass, like a surging solid black cloud. It had goat horns, but it was an indescribable thing that could not be described in words. He was just about to ask what the painting was. Bruce. Charles Reed's voice came from downstairs. Come to the basement. Hearing Reed's call, Lizu had to turn around and leave. The basement, after turning the stairs, was a huge pit connected to an unknown black space. These two have become a must-have for almost every household in Oakmont. The basement of the sanatorium also has beds. When Lizu rushed downstairs, he saw Reed squatting on the ground with a frown on his face, thinking. He used that ability again, and a few seconds later, Reed stood up with a faint blue light in his eyes. He leaned sideways at the door, eavesdropping on something. Then he pushed the door open and dodged to the side, as if something rushed out and almost knocked him down. She was talking about the mirror, the child. Her child died, and the soul was trapped in the mirror. There is a way to save the soul in the mirror and revive the child. So she used a method to take the mirror that Robert Throgmorton wanted. Reed muttered to himself. She rushed out and knocked down a carriage driver. He has the ability to see the crime scene based on evidence, and he is almost invincible in investigating the case. Waking up from the strange state, Reed was a little shaky, and he held onto the wall for a long time before calming down. Let's go find her. Who? Lizu ran to catch up with Reed. A mother who has gone crazy for her child. The two strangers ran on the streets of Oakmont. Passing through the streets of Oakmont sprinkled with sunset, and also through the puzzled eyes of the residents of Oakmont. Huff, huff. Reed had to stop to rest, because he was exhausted. He turned around, but found that the figure was gone again. Damn Bruce Wayne. I knew it. At this time, Lizu had stopped in front of a building. 3 stories high. The sign "Welcome to Oakmont's largest mall" successfully stopped him. The nearby residents have moved away, and there is not even a single pedestrian on the street next to the mall. Under the setting sun, the elongated shadow connects Lizu to the mall gate. Roar, 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 boom, boom, vibration, and roar looming. It seems that we are going to encounter a big trouble. Lizu stood at the door, and the setting sun pulled his shadow from the northeast to the east. A wooden box fell from the sky. Lizu bent down to pick up something before pushing the door open and walking in. On the undecorated first floor, hand-welded metal shelves were filled with bagged food soaked in floodwater. The toast that was stored in water had grown mold and hair. Lizu stopped just after taking the first step. He lowered his head and looked at his feet. A pool of yellow viscous liquid with a strange fishy smell, and when he lifted his foot, the yellow liquid stuck to the sole of his shoe would be drawn. Raw. AA. Chapter 87. Into Madness. Ugh. The tear on the monster's head opened, and the sticky green glue liquid overflowed. When it came into contact with the air, it burned and emitted white smoke and pungent acidic gas. The shelf under the monster was the first to be hit. The iron pipes as thick as fingers were easily burned off, and a big hole was broken in the floor, revealing the dilapidated floor tiles. It seems that the construction team cut corners at the time. Lizu took a half step back. The physical instinct of gunfighting had already driven him to raise his arms. Bang! The bullet shot straight at the monster's head. The monster just leaned back slightly, and there was no other symptoms, except that the bullet hole on the head had gurgling green liquid flowing out. The monster vomited the green sticky substance more vigorously, and the middle was mixed with yellow sticky liquid. It's disgusting. Lizu pinched his nose and complained. Boom. The floor of the first floor of the mall shook violently, and the monster, which was 2 or 3 meters tall, jumped and pressed down like a small mountain. A dark shadow enveloped Lizu. Lizu turned around quickly and stepped on the nearby shelf. He ran up quickly. His body was nimble, hanging upside down in the air and performing gunfighting. The exquisite human calculation formula allowed him to accurately hit the target, even when he was hanging upside down. Bang, bang, bang. 3 more flowers with yellow liquid and green pulp bloomed. The monster's body was just shaking slightly, which was not a big deal, but after the shaking ended, it responded with a more violent attack. The nimble man and the bulky but powerful monster started an indistinguishable battle on the first floor of the mall. When the gun was fired, there must be a puff sound of bullets entering the flesh. When Lizu landed again, he stood on one foot on the wooden handrail of the stairs. His strong balance ability allowed him to stand on one foot, as if walking on flat ground. The entire first floor in front of him was already a mess. In addition to the acrobatics ability, which increased his proficiency by 20%, he only got a sweaty and panting body. With his physical strength exhausted, Lizu was not nervous, but grinned with excitement. How can people not love the feeling of accelerated heartbeat? On the other hand, the monster with bullet holes all over its body became thinner and more agile after releasing a large amount of green viscous body fluid. The monster pounced on Lizu again. If you stare at the monster's left and right arms, you will find that his arms are made of 2 thighs and forearms fused together. A strong wind hits and slaps his ears, making a whistling sound. Lizu turned around, and a shotgun-shaped water gun appeared in his left hand. The water gun turned into a real gun, and the bullets were loaded. Bang! A shot hit the monster's chest, interrupting the monster's forward movement. It swayed and tilted towards the stairs. with smoke and a huge collapse sound. The concrete cast stairs were scrapped. Lizu had already turned over and dodged lightly when the monster pounced on him. As soon as he landed, he stomped his right foot on the ground and turned around forcefully, aiming the muzzle at the bloated body that fell into the wall. One shot. The monster's body trembled violently, roaring in a muffled voice, but it was difficult to get up and launch a counterattack. Lizu took a step closer. 2 shots were fired immediately. Bang. Closer. Reload. 3 shots. 4 shots. After each shot, the monster's body shook once, and its struggle became more intense. When Lizu's body was empty, the huge monster's limbs had been knocked off. On the right side of the thick suture, only a thin arm remained. Roar. The monster's anger reached its peak due to its broken body and severe pain. It was still roaring and trying to get up. However, Lizu jumped onto its back faster and put the shotgun against the monster's head. Lizu smiled. Boom. The bald head was shattered by the fierce gunfire, and red, white, and green things flew all over the sky. The monster fell heavily to the ground. Lizu jumped away lightly, swung the shotgun with one hand, and put the shrunken toy gun into his pocket. Why is there no exploration level when I see a new monster? Lizu turned his back to the monster's headshot corpse and scratched the back of his head in confusion. He was also curious in his heart. Such a difficult monster was not like those multi-legged monsters. Apart from its ugly appearance, it did not bring any burden to his spirit. Lizu was facing the monster's corpse with his back to it, wondering. Guji, the corpse lying behind him, moved slightly and slowly got up. It had no head and could not roar. It could only make Guji sounds. Lizu still had his back to the monster. From the slight trembling of his right ear, it was clear that he was not really unaware of what was happening behind him. He threw it back casually. A palm-sized toy was thrown on the monster, bounced off, and rapidly grew in size the moment it landed. The wings spread out, and the thing was suspended in the air. Asshole. Don't try to control me with that drug this time. It was the Eagle Girl who woke up from toyization. As soon as she gained freedom and consciousness, she spread her wings and pounced on Lizu. She needed to kill Lizu as soon as possible, so as not to turn back into a toy or be deprived of emotions again. The medicine has lost its effect. Lizu turned around in surprise and looked at the Eagle Girl who spread her wings and pounced on him. Surprise, more like his deliberate exaggeration. After noticing Lizu's undisguised smile, the Eagle Girl felt even worse. Lizu tilted his head and looked behind the Eagle Girl. Through the gaps in the Eagle Girl's feathers, he could see the headless monster's body twitching irregularly, swelling, and growing larger and larger. Bang! Exclamation mark. The green and yellow juice covered the entire first floor of the mall. Only Lizu was rescued by the Eagle Girl who spread her wings and was not stained at all. On the other hand, the Eagle Girl was caught off guard by the impact on her back and was thrown to the ground, twitching violently. Thank you. Lizu bowed to the Eagle Girl very gentlemanly. He stepped on tiptoe, jumped to the place that was not stained by the sticky liquid, and jumped to the basement. The angry Eagle Girl was left there, drowning in the sticky liquid with her wings drooping. When Lizu's figure completely disappeared, the anger in the Eagle Girl's eyes magically became less and less. A few minutes later, she raised her head and laughed. The corners of her mouth were like being trimmed by scissors, and she was grinning widely, spreading madness. The dark and damp underground space is like a small drawer deep in everyone's heart where secrets are hidden. Most of the residents of Oakmont choose to hide their secrets in the basement. As expected, there is a big hole in the basement here. Lizu stopped, not because of the huge pit that is standard configuration of every household, but because of the weird magic circle next to the big hole. The strange words are combined into an even weirder magic circle, as if the soul will be sucked away by just looking at it. There is also a manuscript on the ground, which should be a spell. In addition to the words nurturing mother, eternal life, believer at the beginning, there are some strange words that are difficult to understand, and it is difficult to associate their pronunciation, even if you look at the words. If these symbols are placed in a dream, they will definitely be interpreted, of course, only in dreams. A sacrificial ceremony. He held the manuscript in his hand, but he was questioning in his heart whether he really wanted to examine the existence of God again. Chapter 88 EOD. Lizu stood up and walked around the edge of the big hole in the basement. He squatted down from time to time, picked up something, paused for a while, and then stood up again. There were documents, a screwdriver, and a feather pen. Finger. After squatting down again, he found something incredible. The stiff human finger. It seemed that it was torn off by someone. No blood, it looked like it was torn from a dead body. There are also traces of dragging, torn clothes. Lizu pinched the broken finger with his right hand, stared at it with his left hand on his waist, like a model who knew he was being photographed. After carefully searching the entire basement, Lizu once again returned to the magic circle. After the flood, the mall's power system was damaged, and all the light in the basement came from the light at the basement entrance. Thanks to Lizu's battle with the giant monster just now, there were many holes in the first floor, and sporadic light beams shone in to support the entire basement. Lizu stared at the magic circle for a long time, then lay down, lying in the center of the magic circle. The light at the basement entrance was blocked, which immediately attracted his attention. Hawkgirl stood at the stairs, grinning. My place has finally become a crazy club. Lizu sat up, looking at the crazy laughing Hawkgirl, and snapped his fingers helplessly. He also hoped that there would be a normal person around him sometimes, but it seemed that the body fluids of the huge monster had strange abilities that would drive people crazy. Bang! Hawkgirl instantly shrank, turned into a plastic toy, and fell to the ground, bouncing down the stairs and falling beside Lizu's hand. Nosebleed overflowed. Lizu wiped the nosebleed with the back of his hand, lay down again, and put the Hawkgirl toy in his pocket. 20 minutes later, Lizu's body suddenly began to twitch. He laughed loudly and curled up in the magic circle. Then he covered his head in pain and howled in pain. It lasted for a few minutes before Lizu stopped and gasped heavily. World exploration degree. 10%, so that's it. Lizu sat up from the ground, rubbing the sweat on his forehead with his sleeve. When the exploration degree reached 10%, Lizu's eyes suddenly went black. His consciousness flew out through the time and space gate and saw more. There were 3 twinkling stars in the sky, recording his journey in the infinite multiverse. The first one was the world of superheroes. The second one was the end of the world, a utopia without emotions. The third one was a crazy town, full of indescribable gods. He struggled to get up from the ground. It's time to go. It seemed that he had found the reason why the huge monster appeared underground. Oakmont was close to the sea, and often when the sea breeze blew, there would be a drizzle of rain falling on his head. A man in a white suit and carrying a briefcase walked beside Lizu. He seemed to be used to it. Even if the rain soaked his clothes, he did not speed up his pace. After leaving the mall, Lizu walked towards the second destination. There were thousands of people in the whole town, but they could always tell who was a foreigner at a glance. The identity of a foreigner was like a plague here. Lizu even wondered if he was not soaked, because the rain was hiding from him like the residents of the town. Would you like some fish? It's free. The Innsmouth man who was selling fish for free on the roadside spoke to Lizu casually. The 2 baskets of fish in front of him were already empty. He was one of the few people who did not reject outsiders, or it might be because the popularity of Innsmouth people was higher than that of outsiders. EOD. Lizu stopped and observed the gills on the other person's neck. He had heard about EOD from George and many other places. It was a charity organization that helped the poor and did good deeds without charging a penny. We treat everyone equally and like to help everyone. The Innsmouth man handed the fish to Lizu. Thank you. Lizu took the fish and stuffed it into the inner pocket of his windbreaker under the strange gaze of the Innsmouth man. His windbreaker struggled violently twice on his chest, but the fish was still alive. It must be because it was uncomfortable in the upside down position, so it resisted violently twice. If you want to quickly integrate into this town, join EOD. It will definitely speed up your acceptance by the lower class residents. I believe you have experienced it. The feeling of being excluded is not very comfortable. Just like TV marketing, after the Innsmouth people locked on the target, they began to pull Lizu to join. In summary, we have products and ideas. You just need to pay enthusiasm, and of course you can also pull like-minded friends in to do it together. Reject any form of pyramid selling. What did you say? The Innsmouth people asked curiously. Ahem, I heard that there is a very scary restaurant, and women will definitely disappear if they go there. I have a friend who disappeared there, and I want to find her. Lizu changed his words. Earl of Greenow's restaurant? I advise you not to go. The Innsmouth people were a little scared. Why? Have you been there? There are Hell Reapers and Prowlers there. No matter if you are a man or a woman, you will definitely not survive. Hell Reapers, Prowlers, let me guess. Are they monsters with multiple arthropods and humanoid monsters with torn faces? Did you encounter them? The Innsmouth people were a little shocked. No one has ever survived after encountering them. Then I'm really honored you may need this. A hand stretched out, wearing a black gauze glove. It was a mature woman wrapped in a grey windbreaker, and she always had a gentle smile on her face. The newspaper will tell you everything you want to know. Oh. Thank you. Lizu took the newspaper and took a deep breath inadvertently when the other party stretched out his hand. Even though the rain washed away the smell, he was still sure that the lady had a familiar smell. Arkham Asylum, the sanatorium, Hawkgerald, and even Lizu himself. It was the smell of madness. It's not good for the baby to get caught in the rain when you are pregnant. Lizu noticed the other party's bulging belly. He is a gift from the sea. Anna stroked her belly with a very pious expression. It was as if that was not the little life she was pregnant with, but a god who temporarily lived in her body. Respecting life, one will not be so oblivious. Lizu looked at Anna's bulging belly for a few times before turning his eyes to the newspaper. The Earl of Greenow's restaurant is about to reopen. We are recruiting workers, dishwashers, and waiters. Interested friends can come to Greenow's restaurant and find Diamond Mears for an interview. A recruitment advertisement with an address posted on it. The restaurant that was exposed to missing people is still recruiting normally. Just looking at the newspaper page, Lizu felt it was very abnormal. If you need help, you can come to the fish market to find us. I'm Anna. I'm there most of the time. Anna held her belly and said, strangers in this town need help. It's very interesting that she didn't stop Lizu from going to the restaurant. If you need it, I will definitely do it. Lizu bowed slightly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89 Weird Restaurant. The dark green painted car slowly rotated its rubber tires and passed by the intersection that exuded a damp smell. The pungent smoke from the chimney filled the entire street. The rain rushed down immediately, and the exhaust gas of the car was immediately shattered by the fine raindrops and disappeared without a trace. The only disgust could be seen on the faces of the small town residents who walked by with their noses covered. Cough cough. There was another cough. Walking along the broken brick sidewalk from the intersection, behind a thin pine tree in the north aisle, there was a restaurant with a strange temperament. Judging from the expressions of the passers-by, it was obvious that something extraordinary was hidden inside. There were iron fences tied with gold wire on both sides of the restaurant, representing the doorway with the atmosphere of the upper class. Two lampshades with eagle patterns were lit on both sides of the door frame. The light was gentle and strange, and it was hazy in the rain and fog. The neat red carpet was spread on the stairs and the edge of the path, with the corners curled up. Just imagine, a woman in a white luxurious pleated skirt, gently hugging her young and handsome British male companion in a tuxedo, with a happy smile on her face. They stepped on the gentle light, pulled out a chair and sat down, enjoying the warm atmosphere, ordered a plate of French foie gras, and shared the warmth that melted in the mouth with each other. Well, that's really elegant and wonderful. Cough cough cough. Ha ha ha. Lizu was standing at the door of the restaurant, his shoulders shaking. The dangerous atmosphere in the restaurant was like two iron hooks, pulling the corners of his mouth to the sides and raising them upwards. Zio. As the white door was pushed open, the scene inside the Earl of Greenow's restaurant was completely revealed to Lizu. TSK. His face did not hide the disappointment of the scene behind the door. It's not that the scene inside the Earl's restaurant is so scary, on the contrary, it is very special, especially clean. Where are the fingers? Where is the head? Where is the dismembered girl? Why is there nothing? Lizu did not hide his emotions. but it was inevitable that people would be excited to hear these words. The residents passing by were shocked and looked at Li Zhu in horror and listed him as one of the dangerous element in their hearts. Before pushing open the door, Li Zhu had already imagined the world behind the door, the remains, monsters, blood. But when he really pushed open the door, what appeared in front of him was only the unreasonably neatness. The unusually neat restaurant, the neatly arranged tables and chairs. As Li Zhu opened the door, the fresh air hit him. Li Zhu pushed the door and walked into the restaurant with disappointment. He approached a dining table, and the 4 chairs were not left with any stains, just like the tabletop that was deliberately tidied by the salesperson before it was sold. It was not only neat, but also had the smell of carefully selected perfume. The plates were carefully placed on the table, and the knives and forks were placed on the left and right, gently pressing the tablecloth without a wrinkle. No one could associate the elegant and neat restaurant in front of them with the restaurant that would make women disappear. This is a restaurant that is careful enough. Li Zhu took a deep breath. The smell in the air was strange. It was the smell of careful cooking. The raw materials could not be smelt, but it had an uncomfortable aroma. Moreover, a lot of cheese had been put in it, and the smell, after baking, was very recognizable. Li Zhu did not look like a detective investigating missing persons, but rather a tourist, visiting the first floor, as if no one was around. Perhaps it was a story heard outside, and there was no one in the restaurant at this time. However, the progress of things did not stop there. Soon, Li Zhu had an unexpected harvest. On the wooden table near the ordering bar, there was a half-written letter. The recipient was Mr. Robert Slogmorton. Is this matter related to that gorilla face? Li Zhu picked up the letter. He was the employer of Detective Charles Reed, and now all of Reed's actions were under his orders. Li Zhu thought of the colleague who was as mentally ill as himself, grinned, and his eyes were on the letter again. With his limited vocabulary, he could only roughly understand. Earl Greenhou's restaurant is honored to have you visit our restaurant. I will serve you the most abundant and perfect meal. Please keep your stomach ready and wait for me to bring you a wonderful food journey. Chef. The name behind it has not been written yet. It seems that the only thing missing from writing a letter is the signature of the chef and mailing the letter to Throgmorton, the white ape. It is a useless letter. After a simple conclusion, Li Zhu completely threw the letter aside. On the first floor of the restaurant, after reluctantly turning around for a few times, Li Zhu's eyes turned to the basement. From the experience before, the basement is the last destination in the hearts of the people of Oakmont. Li Zhu pushed the door of the basement and did not move. He had to temporarily give up the idea of going to the basement and walk to the second floor. The second floor was still clean and new, except for a table with a strange candle lit and a set of plates on it. The food on the plate had been eaten. This guest looks very anxious. Li Zhu touched the stains on the tablecloth. There were oil stains on the tablecloth where his fingers had touched. He must have been starving. Li Zhu walked downstairs and rushed to the basement again. Bang! The bullet penetrated the door lock. The basement door shook violently. With the final push, the whole door collapsed. Li Zhu put his left hand in his pocket, held the gun in his right hand, and walked into the door with his shoulders slumped. His eyes swept over the bloodstains at the door. The iron hooks used to hang cattle and sheep carcasses in the slaughterhouse 2 steps away. The human skull that was not cleanly deboned in the iron basin. A basin of dirty filth and women's torn clothes. In the end, he stopped at the white chef holding a knife, wearing a red and white apron, standing still and looking at Li Zhu in astonishment. If I disturbed your meal? Li Zhu looked at the man's dining table, on which lay pieces of red meat and chopped onions, being pickled. Ah! The chef howled, and threw the meat-cutting knife in his hand at Li Zhu. When Li Zhu dodged sideways, he quickly grabbed the pistol on the table. Puff! The bullet suddenly penetrated the chef's left temple, pierced his entire brain, and finally left a clear bullet hole on the wall. Then I'm sorry. Li Zhu had just finished speaking. Before the voice fell, Li Zhu had already turned and left. Killing people, eating people, and making people into dishes. He was not interested at all. This dullness was just like the corners of his mouth that had never been raised. If I had known earlier, I would have followed Reed to investigate the mirror. Li Zhu walked out of the door of Earl Greenhou's restaurant, pouted his lips in boredom, and walked towards the wet street. Now he just hoped that Dr. Grant would not let him down too much. Chapter 90 Blood Healing Potion List. Pushing open the door of the sanatorium, the familiar madness rushed towards him, and Lizu took a deep breath of relief. I really miss Gotham. Maybe I can go back once. That sick world seemed to be his final destination. Going back was not just to visit relatives. I believe that making a big fuss and watching the green-haired guys and black bats in that world busying around would also be fun. Lizu shook his head, shook off the useless imagination in his mind, and walked towards Dr. Grant. Hey, you're back. Dr. Grant turned his head and was very excited to see that it was Lizu. If the reward for completing the task is not enough, I will definitely shoot you. Lizu looked at Grant with some disdain. This fearful neurotic doctor, like the bruised eye bags, has no other effect except making people more depressed. Dr. Grant just asked urgently, what's the matter with the strange noise underground? It seems that this matter has confused him for a long time. A kind of stitched monster, a kind of witchcraft? Lizu recalled and said, 7 or 8 corpses, pulled by a weak guy, gathered on the magic circle. I don't know what he did afterwards, but the final thing looks very disgusting. He fanned his nose with his right hand, and it seemed that the strange smell was still lingering in front of his nose. He didn't have Reed's ability to see what happened in the past, but the traces of the bodies being dragged on the ground were too obvious. He even imitated the dragged bodies himself, lying on the magic circle, to feel the placement of the bodies. The final conclusion was that the guy who did all this was too weak. He had already used up all his strength to pull the bodies together, and there was no pattern to the placement of the bodies. Witchcraft? Witchcraft. This answer obviously exceeded Dr. Grant's psychological expectations, and he muttered a few words. What about the other place? Just a psychopath. I think it's better to read about him in the newspaper than for you to hear about him from me, Lizu suggested, not interested in the cannibal, and even had a hard time getting excited to continue talking. Of course, Dr. Grant nodded happily. He knew very well that he should not force a madman who was capable of killing himself. Lizu stretched out his hand. Then, it's time to talk about the reward. Of course, if you don't mind, I have a good medicine that can suppress your madness. Dr. Grant seemed to be well prepared. He was sure that Lizu would never refuse the thing he took out. The thing that made me look like that? Lizu pointed at the fisherman who was banging his head against the wall in the corner. The fisherman had completely lost his self-control and had a mental breakdown. Everything he did was out of his control. Lizu had experienced this feeling many times. Of course not, this thing. Dr. Grant took out an envelope from his white coat pocket. This is the speculated source of my potion. My good friend, he is a famous scholar at Miskatonic University in Arkham. Grant unfolded the letter. On the worn-out letter paper, the feather pen briskly drew a series of fading words. I once told him everything that happened in Oakmont through letters, and he also found a drug called blood therapy in the book and sent it to me. The origin of this thing is too strange. He actually linked the drug to something indescribable. Haha. Grant laughed, but when he saw Lizu laughing, he hurriedly stopped himself. He didn't want to have too much in common with the madman in front of him. The backward blood injection method in blood therapy is too unhygienic. There is no blood type matching. Even the most basic disinfection and hygiene are marked with the words absolutely not allowed. Every step of medical prohibition seems to run counter to this drug, but it is true that someone relied on this thing to recover, although that person soon fell into a serious illness due to the injection infection. Dr. Grant said, I still extracted the useful drugs in the drug list he gave me and wanted to make a special medicine that can control madness myself, but the drug obviously lacks something crucial. Dr. Grant didn't seem to want to use materials that did not conform to the logic of medical prohibitions. Just a quick glance, you can see a lot of special things, more like witchcraft materials than medicine. Happy cooperation. Lizu took the letter directly. In addition to a few pleasantries, the letter was a detailed overview of the ingredients of the potion. Dr. Grant quickly retracted his gaze from Lizu's back. A potion formula that will never be used in exchange for some peace and quiet is a good deal. I'm really crazy. How can I let a madman investigate He was still muttering in a low voice. It seems that he still doesn't believe that the monster made of human corpses is the one that made a huge noise in the basement. Lizu stood on the street again, and sporadic pedestrians passed by. No, it's still not right. Lizu grabbed his hair and muttered to himself. This won't work, right? No, absolutely not. This may work. No, still not. We have to talk about methods. Oh, methods. How about this? He muttered to himself. Fortunately, Oakmont already has enough strange people and strange things. Talking to oneself is still an ordinary abnormal person. Sir, are you okay? A passing young girl was curious about the gentleman in a trench coat. In this small town, closed by the sea, everything outside is curious. The girl looked at the man in front of her, from his jet black hair to his trench coat to his expensive patent leather boots. Just like the Oakmont Library, which records the templates of foreign poets and princesses. Right. It should have been like this. Lizu raised his head suddenly, smiling brightly. Ah. The girl was startled and stepped back in panic. A strong wind followed, and the wind mixed with white feathers hit her hard, and she stepped back in a hurry. Her heels hit the stone, making her sit firmly on the ground. Her butt was cold and painful, and tears were already filling her eyes, ready to burst out at any time. The girl's eyes couldn't help but look up, following the man in front of her who raised his hand high. At this time, above his head, a woman flapping her wings was laughing crazily. Angel, or devil? The sound was harsh. A doubtful voice sounded, and the winged humanoid creature on the man's head suddenly turned into a toy, fell, and smashed on the ground. Made of plastic, the toy only bounced twice, and finally rolled in front of the girl's toes. Yes, sorry. She quickly stepped back, not caring about the flowery dress stained with dirty mud, looking at the man walking towards her with a smile on his face, apologized, and ran away. She was not mentally prepared to face the outside world. It should have been like this earlier. Lizu smiled and picked up the toy on the ground. Chapter 91 Yellow Clothes. In this town, which is full of various beliefs, and even has various indescribable gods showing miracles, isn't Lizu slow? Snail-like detective-style investigation method too slow and stupid? It would be better to deliberately stand out to attract their attention, although this may also be eaten alive by those things. My level should not be enough, haha. He was still talking to himself, but this time Lizu's intention seemed to be guessed. He deliberately created a big scene to attract the attention of the indescribable things in the dark. Whether it was the mother who gave birth to all things, the Holy Virgin, or the Dagon believed by the people of Innsmouth. One of them has to come out, right? The eagle girl in his hand was bound by an unprecedented force, unable to show human posture, and could only remain in the toy state. That's a very stupid decision for you. Lizu turned slowly in the direction of the voice. He just released the eagle girl on the street, but the pedestrians were weird, as if they didn't see anything, and continued to walk with their heads down. There was just one more man behind him. He was wearing a yellow sweater inside, and a leather jacket outside. His right arm was wrapped in gauze. It was estimated that this gentleman had just come out of the hospital. The smell of medicine was very strong. I came with advice. His lifeless eyes stared at Lizu. Lizu's extremely infectious smile could not affect his mood at all. It hopes you can be honest. Next, hide in the corner of Oakmont. Seed. Lizu was aroused. However, after the man finished speaking, he turned around quickly, without any intention of continuing to entangle with Lizu. The things revealed in a few words of this guy who suddenly appeared, were enough for Lizu to savor for a long time. Lizu, who insisted on getting to the bottom of things, and being the will of a good young man in Gotham, immediately chased after him. At the corner, a closed alley, a hairy rat came out of the hole in the wall, and jumped over the man's instep. The man stopped, and did not move. Lizu raised his hand, and was about to touch it, but the man fell to the ground with a plop. The red liquid gushed out instantly, soaking the ground in red. The rat that had just escaped jumped back skillfully, lying on the body of the fallen man, and began to bite, and even. It raised its head and squeaked, its whiskers sticking with the smelly juice trembling, and soon a large number of rats poured out. They didn't care that Lizu was standing there, and swarmed up, and bit the man. Now there is nothing to ask. Lizu walked back out of the alley. There was also a little regret in his heart. He is from the yellow organization. A voice came from behind. Do you people in Oakmont like to suddenly appear behind others? Anna, with a bulging belly, stood on the opposite side of the alley and appeared behind Lizu so quietly. An ordinary woman with a big belly could easily avoid Lizu's perception and appear like a ghost. Looking at her, Lizu couldn't help but pull the corners of his mouth to both sides. This small city on the sea is weird. Very, very weird. From the first moment of landing on the island, this was destined to be a crazy journey. The fanatics of that organization always use this method to pass on information. Anna ignored Lizu's laughter. He was not the weirdest one. I suggest you find a place to hide first. You can come to the fish market tonight. We EOD help all poor people, including those who are excluded and wanted. Anna reminded very kindly. Oh. Lizu said curiously. He noticed that 2 policemen in the distance had already pulled out their guns after seeing him. But in just a short while, he became a wanted criminal. Things are getting more and more interesting. He's going to run away. He's communicating with the people of EOD. If that's involved, things will be troublesome. The police patrolling the streets of Oakmont found Lizu and quickly drew their guns. Chase him, Hank. Damn, how can he run so fast? The 2 policemen chased him without hiding their purpose. The white man was born tall and had the advantage of long legs, but he lost completely in the race. The black-haired man with a strange smile in patent leather boots and a long windbreaker climbed up the wall lightly, as if he was stepping on springs. He disappeared in a few jumps, completely disappeared. The 2 policemen had to stop chasing and turn their attention to Anna, who was bulging with a belly. Even if the other party was from EOD, they couldn't pretend not to see it. Not to mention that the capitalists behind the police station really hated these fish-headed people. Late at night, the full moon hung on the stone tower. There were strange calls in the air, and the bozzy sucking sound was far and near. Thank you for your cooperation in the fish market. The lights of a warehouse were still on, and the heavy wooden door was pushed open with a creaky sound, and the police walked out with a look of disgust. Following closely were 2 fish-headed Innsmouth people. You're welcome. We at EOD are part of Oakmont. We have an obligation to help with everything that happens here. The Innsmouth people were very enthusiastic. Mr. Police, if you have any questions, you are welcome to come anytime. Well, goodbye, Miss Anna. The police nodded to Anna, who was standing inside the door with a smile on her face, and turned and walked into the night. Why did you suddenly change your personality? The Innsmouth people changed their expressions, from humble and enthusiastic to impatient. Those outsiders are making these policemen less authoritative. Anna turned slowly. She cast her eyes into the warehouse. This is a huge seafood warehouse full of fish. It is a well-known secret that Oakmont fishermen have difficulty catching fish, but Innsmouth people always return with a full load. No wonder the locals are so repulsive to Innsmouth people. As long as we can study the key, Anna's voice stopped abruptly, including the Innsmouth people behind her. They were also stunned. 10 minutes ago, the police came to EOD with a newspaper to ask about the whereabouts of a person, and 2 minutes ago, the police left. In this warehouse with only one entrance. At this moment, the wanted criminal was lying on a chair with his feet on the table, staring at the newspaper intently. You're here. Anna quickly suppressed her shock and put on a calm smile. Although she didn't know how the other party got in, as long as this capable outsider could be used for her own benefit, things would definitely develop in a direction that would benefit her. Bang! The newspaper was slapped on the table. When was this photo taken? The finger pointed to a snapshot on the newspaper. In the photo, Lizu raised his right hand high, and in front of him was a girl who had fallen down, with a look of horror on her face. The headline of the newspaper below: the criminal who killed Mr. Johannes van der Borg is a foreigner. The murderer is rampant in Oakmont. Reporting his whereabouts to the police can not only protect the town, but also get a bonus. Chapter 92: The Seed of Reincarnation. Another hallucination. Lizu slapped the table, making it thump. From the photo in the newspaper, his movements were like those of a carefully staged movie poster, with a twisted smile. If it was just like this, there would be nothing special. The girl might have been one of the members who took the photo and framed Lizu. What really made her feel interesting was that there was nothing above Lizu's head in this photo. Without the Hawk Girl, hallucinations had already surrounded him tightly. Since entering Oakmont, it was difficult to tell when it was reality and when it was illusion. "You're here." Anna held the table and looked down at Lizu. "The treatment of murderers in Oakmont is not much better than those monsters. Since you come to us now, it means that we have the possibility of cooperation." She once again threw out an olive branch. This time, Lizu's initiative to come made her feel that she had a sure win. "Join you?" Lizu tilted his head. His eyes moved away from Anna's face and placed them on the fish head of the Innsmouth people, then moved away again and turned back to Anna. "Yes, we can do more than you think, and now we need you to join us." Anna's eyes were eager. The ability of the stranger in front of her refreshed her cognition again and again. If EOD wanted to gain a place in Oakmont, winning over the mayoral candidate was only one of them. At the same time, if they could get an indestructible blade, they would be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Lizu happened to be the blade in her heart. "I don't want to guard a group of fish heads every day." Lizu stood up with the help of the table, leaned forward to the Innsmouth man, put his nose close to him, and took a deep breath. Cough cough, ka. He wiped the tears from coughing and said disdainfully, "How long have you not taken a shower, brother? The fishy smell is too strong." "Ah, sorry, I forgot. You are a fish. One, huh." He muttered to himself and struggled with the quantifier. The expression of the Innsmouth man gradually became fierce. The discrimination of the fish head man had touched their bottom line. "I have a little trick to suppress the fishy smell. Do you want it?" Lizu seemed unaware and said to himself, "Use chili peppers. Put more chili peppers." Now just thinking about the taste of chopped pepper fish head. TSK. Is my saliva going to flow out? It's so unsightly. Sorry, this is not funny. Anna's face gradually turned cold. "Really? Then I'm sorry. My old boss likes to joke a lot. It seems that I still can't learn her fur." "Then let's talk about something else. For example, I agree to join you. By the way, what do you Innsmouth people usually eat? Earthworms?" The moon hangs high above the lighthouse in the port, and a beam of light rises from the water surface and touches the top of the lighthouse. Like a shortcut to climb up to the moon, the Innsmouth people in diving suits, with their new friends, plunge into the deep sea water one after another. Oakmont seems to be built on a floating island, and the interconnected submarine paths have completely lifted it up. The magical thing is that this small island can always stabilize its position in the sea. Lizu followed the Innsmouth man and came to a hidden cave. In the wet underwater cave, the burning torch barely illuminated the road ahead, and it was no longer dark. Almost there. Deep in the cave, there was a woman's crazy voice, following the dripping water drops, tearing apart the thick water vapor and mist, following the crazy voice to go inside. The first thing that came into view was a wall that looked like a monster with its eyes closed. It was difficult to describe its appearance with ordinary words. World Exploration degree 12% in front of the strange wall. The crazy woman was holding a stone and muttering to herself. "She is Professor Deo. Sounds familiar." The fishman next to him looked at Deo with a crazy expression, as if the appearance of this crazy woman was just a useless skin, and there was something more awe-inspiring hidden deeper inside. "The reincarnation has begun." Deo suddenly turned around, facing Lizu with a sick face, staring at Lizu with nervous eyes. I'm a seed. It can be seen that you are not only a seed, but also about to sprout." Lizu grinned and teased. "You are also a seed." Deo was still talking to herself. She looked quite crazy. "But only I can complete the mission and restart the reincarnation." Plop. Deo knelt on the ground, holding a stone in both hands. At a glance, Lizu's eyes were attracted by the stone, which contained some indescribable power. At the same time, Lizu's world exploration degree was jumping wildly. 13%, 14%, 15%, 16%. The numbers seemed to be telling him in this way that this stone was the key to understanding this world. "Hey, what are you doing?" Kneeling on the ground, the crazy Deo roared. Just now, Lizu suddenly snatched her treasure. "I'm the seed that is suitable for selection. I will definitely complete my mission." She was still shouting, but was kicked away by Lizu. The Innsmouth people on the side did not expect that Lizu, who was one of them, would suddenly take action, and immediately took action. He rushed over quickly, but was knocked down even faster. The balance of victory in the battle fell firmly on Lizu's side from the beginning. The ground was full of Innsmouth people. Professor Deo also covered his kicked chest, breathing rapidly and adjusting his state. Mind telling me everything you know? Lizu squatted in front of Deo with a stone. The moonlight was about to retreat, the tide surged, and the heavy diving suit suddenly emerged from the sea. In the clumsy swimming method, the person in the diving suit swam to the shore with difficulty. The helmet was taken off, revealing Lizu's sweat-soaked black hair and cracked mouth. He lay weakly on the shore. Swimming up from the bottom of the sea had consumed too much of his energy. Ha 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 ha. Lizu began to laugh loudly. This is not the place for you, outsider. The voice was right beside his ear. It was the person from the Yellow Organization, who was surrounded by rats and eaten in the alley during the day. Why would a person who had been digested by the rats appear again? Only to hear this person continue. Even if you are a seed, everything we are doing now is for you. Cooperate. Are you from the Yellow Organization? Lizu tore open his diving suit and climbed out. The other party obviously didn't expect Lizu to come out so quickly. Smart outsider. The Yellow Organization mysteriously appeared. It seemed that everything was under their control. Lizu had already developed a strong curiosity about this organization. What's that sound? A whistle suddenly came from a distance. A ship that Lizu looked very familiar with was floating from the sea level and slowly approaching. Chapter 93. Charon arrives again. The people in the Yellow Organization naturally looked at the ship in the distance. The seed's fate is not good. If you want to save your life, you'd better not do anything. Hehe, I'm good at accepting other people's advice. No matter how curious Lizu is now, a person who has come back from the dead appears in front of him. He must do another thing now. Lizu retracted his gaze from the distant sea. See you later? The only answer he got was the hurriedly leaving back of the man in yellow and the strange yellow mark on his back. Oakmont Town. The flood was like a big axe, smashing this hidden world floating on the sea into pieces. After the flood, the Oakmont people who made a living by fishing found it harder and harder to catch fish, and it was difficult for them to leave here. But those hateful fish heads could easily catch fish, and even mercifully gave away fresh fish for free. That's really disgusting. The people of Oakmont can't stand the disgusting hypocrisy of those fish heads. They can't easily integrate here. The people of Oakmont will do everything they can to stop them. But for some people, they know that the fish heads will always integrate. In fact, for a long time, no one has been able to leave Oakmont. But there are always ignorant outsiders who go to this closed hell. Just like the Charon sailing into the port in the grey morning fog. People stood in twas and threes in the distance, looking at the Charon. Getting close seemed to bring a curse to themselves, so they avoided it. It must be full of strangers. The fisherman, who had a slight fishy smell on his body, had a red nose and a trembling beard. Can't these uninvited guests stay away from Oakmont? What's wrong with these policemen? Are they planning a dinner party today? We haven't been able to catch fish for a long time, and they have closed this place. Albert Throgmorton is missing, and Mr. Throgmorton has mobilized the police force. Another person said, no one can leave Oakmont before Albert is found. As they were talking, the two of them moved their noses, as if they smelled something strange, and frowned and looked back. The man in a long windbreaker, with black hair and yellow skin, also stood behind them. Strangers. The residents of Oakmont quickly dispersed and left. Lizu stood there, looking at the Charon. And there was also a thin man in a yellow suit and a yellow hat, who had stopped at the port early and waited quietly. Johannes van der Borg. Just before last night, Lizu was the murderer who killed him. He was wanted by the whole of Oakmont, and was like a rat crossing the street. Johannes van der Borg seemed to feel Lizu's gaze and turned slowly. He gently raised the brim of his hat with his right hand, revealing an intriguing smile under his brown round glasses. He bowed gently. They were familiar with each other, as if they were good friends who had known each other for a long time. Ahem ha ha, laughter squeezed out of Lizu's throat, and he suppressed it forcefully, so that he didn't laugh too ostentatiously. Whose game is this? It's so interesting. After the Charon stopped, some people had already landed. Charles Reed, a private detective who had come to Oakmont with Lizu on the other Charon, was also suffering from the same crazy torture as Lizu. If Charles Reed was not an actor, it would not make sense for him to suddenly come to Oakmont on the Charon again. Soon, another person got off the ship. A mentally depressed stranger wearing the same clothes as Lizu. He should call himself Bruce Wayne, but that was just a joke. His real identity is very interesting. A few days ago, he could recognize the other person's identity at a glance. His real identity. Did he travel through time and return to a few days ago? Or was this another hallucination journey? Lizu decided to continue watching. After Johans talked with Charles Reed for a long time, when Lizu got ashore, he gave him sincere advice and told him not to run around. Everything was so familiar, without a trace of deviation. Lizu subconsciously reached for his pocket. Professor Doe's treasure disappeared. The culprit who made him go back a few days ago. Lizu looked at his crazy self from the perspective of a bystander and investigated the case with Reed to find the mystery of Albert's death. Tavern. After getting the information he needed, Charles Reed and Lizu, who used the alias Bruce Wayne, left the tavern together. Just about a minute after the two pushed the door and left, the door of the tavern was pushed open again. It was one of the two outsiders who had just left. But he looked much more normal and not obviously neurotic. The outsider walked straight to the corner and stopped in front of the African American female fortune teller. I have already told fortunes for you, and I will not accept refunds. The oil painting on the face of the non-legacy woman was shaking. But she found that the outsider pulled out a chair and sat opposite her. You fortune tellers, are you like peeking at the outline of the novel author? He picked up the wine glass on the table. Poof, the wine glass turned into a plastic toy, and the mellow liquor turned into rubber filling. Poof, the wine glass turned back, the liquor shook, and the spiciness filled the air. Divination. I can only vaguely hear the whispers of God. I can't explain it to you. The fortune teller looked at the other party's strange ability and became nervous. I'm here to fulfill a vow. He took out 3 bullets and placed them on the table, then walked upstairs with a swagger. Fulfill a vow? The female fortune teller was still confused. She took the bullets, and the next moment she was shocked. He really came back from the future? The female fortune teller muttered, her face getting worse and worse. After a while, she hurriedly stood up, packed up her things, and left quickly. Tavern, guest room. Bang. Lewis, an Innsmouth man, slammed the door hard. Madman. He had a hideous fish face. The two strangers who came to him because of Albert's death just now scared him into a cold sweat. If an Innsmouth man fell into the hands of Throgmorton's people, he would never have a good end. Even if he suddenly killed Albert in the spiritual market, he would only get a hot bullet. What's more, among the two people, the cold-faced white man and the crazy yellow man made him feel quite uncomfortable. Dong dong, the knock on the door came again. Did those two guys fail to keep their promise and bring the police? This was quite bad for Lewis. Before he could hesitate, the door was violently kicked open. Hello, we meet again. Chapter 94. After reincarnation. It was that damned smiling face and the black muzzle of the gun that was ready to kill anyone. I have cooperated with you very well. Lewis raised his hands in panic. You can also hand me over to Mr. Slogmorton. I think the law can judge me better. Even if I killed someone by mistake because of mental disorder. The person who came in didn't care about his explanation and begging for mercy at all. You also have a fish head. Do you know EOD? What the other party said was even more unexpected to Lewis. EOD, what does Slogmorton want to do? Lewis' tone changed a little and became much colder. The Innsmouth people and the White Ape people have never been pleasing to the eye on this piece of land. It seems that you fish heads are all members of EOD, which makes it much simpler. It can be seen that he is very satisfied with his guess. EOD is not someone you can afford to offend. Outsider. Lewis was rarely tougher, but his voice was shaking. His intimidation failed to scare the other party, and he sounded unconfident. Facing the threat, the only response was laughter. Lewis' scalp was numb because of the laughter, and the gills under his neck trembled. What do you want to know? I can cooperate. Under the pressure of this weird laughter, Lewis chose to surrender. But what awaited him was the other party's outstretched hand and darkness. Consciousness returned to the body, and his eyes regained light again. Lewis opened his eyes, but found himself in a dark and narrow basement. Every household in Oakmont has such a basement, and it is impossible to use this as an inference to calculate where he is. It must not be a good place. He wanted to move his body, but found it difficult to move, and his heart sank to the bottom of the valley. Dose. Forget it, put it all in. The dizziness gradually dissipated, and Lewis began to notice that there was a table in front of him, and a woman with twin ponytails and hot clothes was holding a syringe. The strange liquid was pushed into the syringe. The air in the syringe was pushed out. A few drops of medicine sprayed out. The candlelight in the basement flickered, and the woman held the syringe in her right hand and walked towards Lewis step by step. Who are you, and what do you want to do? When the Innsmouth people were terrified, their expressions were not much different from those of normal humans. Don't worry, little fishhead, just one injection. You will never be sad and afraid again. Ha, she laughed wildly. Lewis' heart fell to the bottom. It was obvious that, if this kind of medicine was injected into the body, it would have a huge impact. Would a madman inject himself with good things? Knowing that there was a problem, Lewis was powerless to resist. He could only watch the needle pierce his arm and the liquid was slowly pushed into his body. Ding dong, the pointer of the ancient pendulum clock has reached 12 o'clock in the middle of the night. Cuckoo, cuckoo, the cuckoo popped out and announced the time on the hour. Clang clang, clang clang. Lizu sat on the recliner, quietly enjoying the tranquility of the moonlight. He held the sword in his right hand, and with his thumb he lifted the hilt, unsheathed, and sheathed it. The moonlight reflected by the sharp blade made Lizu's face look flickering. Are you having fun? These fish heads, without faith, are like zombies. The clown girl walked in front of Lizu, and she threw it casually. Giloo, a fish head fell to the ground, and rolled into the pile of groceries. Didn't I ask you to restrain yourself a little? Lizu smelled the blood on the other party and shook his head helplessly. Sorry, I'm too happy. The clown girl stood in front of Lizu leisurely, lowering her head, like a child who had made a mistake. But I know something amazing. You will definitely be very interested. She raised her index finger excitedly. Her red lips came in front of Lizu, opened and closed, and the fragrance filled his face. The sleeping girl will wake up when the seeds arrive. Whether it is EOD, Deo, or the mysterious yellow-clothed man, including Lizu, they are inevitably involved in this silent battle. Or, they belong to this battle. The disappearance of Albert Slogmorton has come to a temporary end with the discovery of his body. Strange men and women broke into the hospital, causing great panic. Then, a man and a woman from another country broke into the campus, openly opened fire in the school library, and even kidnapped a professor. Just when the police were busy with these things, there are still people who are exploring according to their own scripts. Just started investigating Dagon, Kill the Underground Monster, Cannibal Restaurant, for several consecutive days. After Lizu deliberately hid his whereabouts, there was no obvious impact on the town of Oakmont at this time. Or, everything he is doing now is what history should happen. In any case, the late Lizu did exactly the same thing as Lizu did before. Chatting with myself is not attractive to Lizu. On the contrary, after learning about the mission of the seed from Lewis, he has turned his attention to the Yellow Organization. They will definitely give a more detailed answer to satisfy Lizu's desire to explore the truth of the origin. The sky in Oakmont is as gloomy as ever. In the mist, a man wearing a windbreaker and patent leather boots walked over, followed by a hot girl with a crazy smile on her face. The bright colors on her body are like a black and white silent movie accidentally integrated with colors, which is incompatible with this gray world, but attracts everyone's attention. Puff pink bubbles exploded. The two stopped in front of the warehouse door. The warehouse door seemed to have its own life, automatically opened, and invited the two to enter. The heavy sound of creaking kept rubbing goosebumps on people's backs. Entering the warehouse, the lights were dim, and walking in on the muddy ground, Lizu and Harley Quinn finally stopped in front of a huge magic circle. Candles were arranged around, and there was a huge yellow magic circle on the ground. The devout believers knelt on the ground and muttered to themselves. Sensing the arrival of outsiders, the believers opened their eyes, and their eyes glowed red. The two people who offended the believers to pray to the gods in their hearts were guilty of a serious crime. They stood up and rushed towards Lizu with a roar. Before Lizu could make a move, Harley Quinn had already rushed out with her yo-yo, which was like a meteor hammer. With a bang, 2 teeth covered with blood flew into the sky, and 1 person fell to the ground. Ha ha ha. She laughed loudly, her pink and blue ponytail swung, drawing a circle in the air, and her long legs and stockings kicked sideways, and her seemingly slender legs hit the crotch of the believer on the right. Oh, I'm so sorry. She covered her mouth and apologized exaggeratedly, which looked really insincere. Ha 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 ha. The yo-yo spun around and entangled the 2 believers. As they turned to hit the oncoming yo-yo, the 2 fell to the ground. Squeak, the yo-yo went up and down in Harley Quinn's hand. The candles on the yellow magic circle were still burning, but the devout believers had all fallen to the ground and could not continue their prayers. You're too harsh. Lizu squatted down, pinched the chin of the believer whose face was swollen like a pig's head, and smacked his lips. TSK, so pitiful, we just came to understand the situation. Who told you to be so harsh? As he said that, he pulled his hand away suddenly, causing the pig-headed believer's head to hit the ground hard, and his already bruised face had another bulge. Do you want to use that? Harley Quinn bent down and asked, revealing a snow-white light. Chapter 95 Drama Opening. The fine rain gradually stopped. Oakmont's Main Street, the muddy road, has rejected several pedestrians. It is very empty. In the mist, a man in a windbreaker walked slowly. His patent leather boots kicked the mud on the ground, and the mud and water exploded, leaving a little mud on his boots. Clown Theatre. The exaggerated name and calm atmosphere give people a very strange feeling. With Oakmont residents unemployed, the theater was forced to close early, and the half-open door trembled gently with the breeze. It should be here. What will be inside? Sea monsters? Octopus tentacles? Or a group of guys with fish tails? Which is more suitable, fish heads or fish tails? If there are really fish tails, should I bring some earthworms as a gift? He was still talking to himself, raised his hand, and gently pushed open the theater door. As Harley Quinn said, after the emotions of this group of fanatics were erased by the potion, they were like zombies, without their own subjective consciousness. Boxian became an interrogation prop that was more useful than truth serum. In this way, Lizu easily got the information he wanted. The Clown Theater, the one in yellow, would receive Lizu there. I always feel like I'm meeting the big boss behind the scenes. With his heart pounding and an uncontrollable smile on his lips, he increased the strength on his wrist. Squeak, the theater door opened. The breeze blew in, and the air was filled with the bright spring flavor that did not belong to this time. The red curtain hanging on the ground blocked the view. The cushions woven with red cotton silk were neatly spread all over the theater's audience seats, and the audience seats were empty. After 2 seconds of silence, a short violin solo suddenly sounded. It was hurriedly guiding something. Lizu also seemed to have received instructions, and walked towards the stage, and finally stopped in the first row of the audience seats, grabbing a first-class seat. The red curtain slowly opened. The true face of Mount Lu was revealed. A high-backed chair, and the guy in yellow clothes was sitting on the chair, holding his cheek with his right hand, squinting at Lizu. He had been waiting for a long time. Welcome to my stage, uninvited guest. The speaker was Johannes van der Borg, who was full of mystery from the beginning. He seemed to know from the beginning that Lizu would definitely come. Johannes. Lizu was not surprised that a guy who wore yellow clothes and swaggered around the city every day was related to the Yellow organization. If you follow my advice and don't walk around everywhere, maybe you won't have so many troubles. What do you want to know? From what he said, it seemed that if Lizu followed Johan's advice after coming to Oakmont, the following things would not have happened, including a certain terrible thing. But how terrible could this terrible thing be? Johans put down his crossed legs, leaned forward, and looked at Lizu with his eyes behind his brown eyes. If I can help you, I will definitely not be stingy. Just tell me your request. Stranger. The pronunciation of the 3-word stranger was very strong. The foreigner in his mouth seemed to be different from the foreigner in the mouth of the residents of Oakmont, and contained other meanings. It's just a small question that's not worth mentioning. Oh. Johans was very interested. I'm the first one. Lizu looked directly at Johannes on the stage. The smile on his face was like a flower about to bloom, slowly becoming brighter. How sharp. Johans was already laughing softly. So what do you think? Johans asked back. Lizu got the information he wanted, and his right hand had already touched the inner pocket. Are you from the Yellow Organization? You can say that Johans was always calm, and the look he gave Lizu was like encouragement. Thank you for your answer. Then please do me one last favor. Lizu held a plastic toy gun in his hand, but when the muzzle shook, the toy had become a murder weapon that could take more lives. The priest's special gun, with an extended barrel, can be used as a close combat weapon, and can also be used for long-range shooting. It is a special modified firearm for gunfighting. What do you want to do? Johans didn't seem to guess that Lizu would suddenly draw a gun and point it at him. His calmness changed a little, and he was a little panicked. Bang! The bullet flew out and penetrated Johans' chest. Johans leaned back and fell on the chair. Blood flowed down the back of the chair. Ah. Lizu scratched his hair. Nothing happened. He waited for a few minutes, but he did not wait for Johans' body to change. Instead, he waited for the police who came following the gunshot. Damn it. Mr. Van der Borg was killed. The police who rushed into the clown theater first saw the yellow closed body lying on the chair. He quickly raised his gun and pointed it at the head of the laughing stranger. Ah. This is bad. Lizu squatted down suddenly, raised his feet, and exerted force on his calves. His body shot out diagonally like a springboard. With his agile figure, he flipped in the air with ease, and even had time to wink at the police who were aiming at him. Acrobatics, mastery, 25%. The superb acrobatic skills from the Flying Grayson family made him particularly comfortable in jumping and moving. Crash! The window was smashed, and the crumpled figure escaped. When the police chased out, they had completely lost the figure of the murderer. Stranger, you want to escape the punishment of the law after committing a crime in Oakmont. It's impossible. Lizu stood against the wall. The footsteps came from far away, and then from near to far away. The narrow alley was swept by the searching police, but they didn't have the courage to go in to investigate. The narrow place in Oakmont may not be able to hide strangers, but there must be those monsters. Looking at the two policemen running hurriedly through the alley, Lizu stepped on 3 monster corpses, and his smile became brighter. It seems that I guessed wrong. Oh, this is bad. He wanted to kill the mysterious Johans Van der Borg just to verify one thing. It has been a while since he killed Van der Borg. Although the execution of the Oakmont police was slow, it was finally mobilized after a businessman was shot and killed by a bad stranger. Following his memory, jumping on the corners of the wall, Lizu quickly came to the location of the memory. Yeah, just right. Lizu was very satisfied, sitting cross-legged on the wall, looking at the scene happening in the distance. In the distance, a girl fell to the ground. In front of the girl was Lizu with his right hand raised high, as if in Lizu's consciousness, there should be something flying above his head. Passersby consciously bypassed Lizu and stayed away from this guy who obviously looked mentally ill. A minute later, the people of the Yellow Organization appeared and brought advice to Lizu. The plot repeats itself. Exactly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96: The Man Who Came Back from the Dead. Crunch, crunch. The sound of fingers being bitten, followed by the sound of the bridge of the nose being bitten off, and the sound of the throat being torn apart, accompanied by a crackling sound. In the alley, the rats devoured the men of the Yellow Organization just like last time, and Lizu turned and left the alley. Click, click. The patent leather boots fell to the ground. A strange smell spread, and the rats were disturbed by this smell and quickly left. It seems that I'm really not the first one. Lizu squatted on the ground, holding his chin with his right hand, his eyes fixed on the bloody corpse on the ground. This scene happened in front of him a long time ago, and now it happened for the second time. So, why did I kill Johans Van der Borg? He muttered to himself, as if he wanted to ask the person in the air, and as if he was asking himself again. But judging from his expression, he should have the answer. He shot Johannes van der Borg to verify 2 questions. First, would killing Johannes van der Borg directly affect everything that happened afterwards? Maybe the last Lizu who killed Johannes was also a person who had experienced reincarnation, and it was not a misunderstanding. He hoped to use killing Johannes to confirm whether he was reincarnated for the first time, and whether there was a Lizu who came to Oakmont earlier before his reincarnation began. It was like Lizu was monitoring another self who came later than himself. This guy came to this world earlier than Lizu. The other party hid in the distance and watched Lizu get on and off the chair in early, killing underground monsters, and even killed Johannes van der Borg early, and put this crime wrong on Lizu's head at this moment. Will the previous me be the first one? In this reincarnation, Lizu couldn't even tell where this world started, and he couldn't imagine why his previous self would kill Johannes van der Borg. There were his own special reasons, and there might also be necessary events to push him. In short, the inevitability of the last incident should not be as hasty as this time. If everything happens as usual, it can only mean that everything he is doing now is in the script, including his sudden impulse to kill Johannes this time. It is also in the script of reincarnation. As for why he wants to kill Johannes, that is the second point. The second point is that killing Johannes may lead to interesting things. Otherwise, why did the previous self kill Johannes? Moreover, the look in Johannes' eyes seemed to have known that Lizu would do this. Since Johannes will be killed sooner or later for some special reason, why not take the initiative and shoot himself in advance? It seems that I accidentally guessed my last thought. Hahaha. Lizu put away his gun and turned away, leaving behind only his miserable corpse after being eaten by rats. Now the drama has just begun. Evil Spirit Reef. While not finding any clues, Lizu plans to wait tonight. According to the development of history, and according to the time calculation, when he wakes up tomorrow, another cruise ship named Charon will enter the port of Oakmont. Everything will start again. How many Lizu will exist in this lonely city on the sea at the same time? Like now, it seems that there will be an increase from 2 to 3. Or will there be 4, 5, or even countless? I'm getting more and more interested. As a wanted criminal, Lizu swaggered into the tavern. The wanted poster posted on the wall was about to be torn off by the sea breeze and thrown in his face, but he remained calm. The hotel owner is an Innsmouth man who seems to never care about news and politics, or maybe the people of Innsmouth have suffered enough humiliation in Oakmont, and he is almost too lazy to contribute to Oakmont. Killing a foreigner who is a famous and wealthy local businessman? It would be better if there are more people, and it would be better to kill the gorilla. Your key. The Innsmouth man collected the bullets and slapped the key with the house number on the table. Thank you. Lizu bowed and thanked him like a gentleman, but he had to ignore the smile on the gentleman's face. 3rd floor, room marked 303 on the left. The key unlocked. Click. As soon as the door was opened, the sea breeze blew in. The fishy and salty sea breeze penetrated through the collar, making him feel cold and uncomfortable. His body seemed to become a little stickier. Their service attitude is really bad. Don't they know that this house is already occupied? Boom, boom, boom. Lizu's heart was beating wildly, and his smile could no longer be suppressed. He opened his eyes wide and quickly pulled out a toy gun with his right hand, turning it into a deadly weapon, pointing it at the person in the distance, who was facing away from the window and looking at him with a smile. Johannes van der Borg, who had been killed by him. Inside the hotel, the windows were tightly closed. The sea breeze blew from somewhere, and the sheets fluttered, the curtains swayed, the moonlight seemed to be blown by this breeze, and Johannes' shadow in the moonlight swayed left and right. Aren't you happy to find out that you are not a murderer? Johannes took a step, and his yellow leather shoes stepped on the wooden floor. For the first time, Lizu found that the footsteps could be so clear. If you shoot again, you will definitely become a real murderer. The person pointed at by the gun was not afraid at all. Lizu put down the gun. He was a rational person, and his crazy laughter was just the influence of external factors. There was no need to waste bullets and shoot a person who could not die at all. What do you want to ask? Johannes mercifully gave Lizu the opportunity to ask himself. How many times have you given this opportunity? Haha, very interesting. Johannes laughed. You are different. Laughter is contagious, and soon no other sounds can be heard in the room, only the laughter of two people. The wind was howling outside, the moonlight was swaying, but the laughter kept coming from the room. Fortunately, the wind blew it away in time. Under the moonlight, one Lizu followed the fishman of VOD and decided to dive into the sea. The other Lizu gave up his rest time, walked out of the hotel, and embarked on his own journey. I have a good friend, Joseph. I believe he can answer your doubts. What happened in this town? Johans left Lizu the last address and advice, and left. Lizu did not continue to pester him. 15 minutes later, he was already standing in front of an apartment, which was where Johans gave the last instructions. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Screams and gunshots. Chapter 97. Crazy laughing hawk girl and Mayan priestess. There was no wind, but the wooden door was shaking crazily. Bang, 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 banging the door again and again. In addition to the man's terrified and angry shouts, there were also strange screams. In the apartment, a man in a leather jacket over a green shirt, holding a pistol, his eyes rolling rapidly in his eye sockets. He was looking for a target, an evil being, that could kill him at any time. Black smoke flashed by. Swish, a wound was left on the man's face, and another flash followed by another one. Quick, blood is flowing wildly. You damn witch, demon, I will make your soul restless forever. He roared weakly. The only response he got was more wounds. Bang, the door was violently kicked away. In the moonlight, a man wearing a windbreaker walked in, stepping on the elongated shadows under the moonlight. As the dust flew, some frivolous voices came. Oh, sorry, I didn't expect this door to be so old. Excuse me, who is Joseph? Get out, I don't have time to deal with you now. The man shouted at the figure in the dust. Joseph's screams never stopped. Whoosh, the strong wind whistled. The dust was blown away, and a white shadow rushed out with a chuckle of crazy laughter. Joseph looked closely and saw a smiling yellow man standing in the smoke. He stood there calmly, and beside him, a woman with an exaggerated smile and a pair of wings swooped out. Here it comes again. After many attacks from the power in the dark, Joseph could barely guess the time when the other party would hurt him, but he didn't have the strength to respond to the other party with bullets. The winged woman had already teleported and flew in front of him, grabbing his ear with her right hand, only 0.1 seconds, or even shorter. As soon as the black smoke appeared, she was caught by the winged woman. The black smoke finally revealed its true face, a bald woman wearing ancient Mayan clothes. There was a fierce light of hatred in her eyes. She was a little surprised when her hand was grabbed by the woman with wings, but she was more angry. Ha 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 ha. The woman with wings was still laughing. Roar. The Mayan bald woman screamed and fought with the woman with wings. The black smoke flickered, and the woman with wings was attacked by an invisible force, suddenly crashing into the ceiling above her head and then smashing into the ground the next moment. Bang, bang, bang. Spitting blood. Ha ha ha. Her crazy laughter did not stop. In this chaotic battle scene, the yellow man in a windbreaker walked towards Joseph calmly. He didn't care about the battle behind him, as if it had nothing to do with him. Even though the wooden floor under his feet was deformed, there was no furniture in the room that was absolutely intact. The flying history books, secret records, stamped draft paper, and sawdust filled the small apartment with the flying feathers and black smoke. Mr. Johannes van der Borg recommended me to come. The smiling face could finally be seen clearly. What a hateful smiling face. That handsome yellow face, that should not belong to this era. The decadent eye bags. Everything is so awkward. You won't let me down, the other party asked. It's him. Joseph knew the other party's identity for the time being. After his eyes only temporarily confirmed the man's appearance, his eyes moved away immediately. The battle rolling in the air obviously touched his heart more. The black smoke struggled to break free from the winged woman, and also made a curse-like voice. I will kill you. Definitely. She knew that she could not win for the time being, so she could only retreat temporarily. She doesn't sound like she likes you very much. You asked her to have an abortion? Your man can't refuse. He guessed the relationship between the two with a bad taste. A bald, charcoal-like weird, ugly and shriveled woman. And a tall, handsome man. It's really an interesting love affair. Joseph was in no mood to pay attention to the teasing. She is a monster. I released her for the same goal as Johans, and of course it is what you are pursuing now. You. Be careful. Joseph pointed at the bloodstained, but increasingly excited winged woman behind the yellow man in horror. After losing the black smoke as her target, she turned her gaze to her master. It should be the master, Joseph thought. But looking at her eyes, it was obviously full of hatred, and she wanted to eat the man in front of her. The wind was whistling, and the wings had already wrapped around the yellow man in the blink of an eye. Then, the strong wind covered the man's eyes. After a few seconds, the strong wind that forced people to close their eyes stopped, and Joseph opened his eyes. The winged woman had disappeared, and in her place, in the man's hand, was a plastic toy. Just looking at the appearance, it was almost exactly the same as the winged woman. You should take a rest. The man put the toy into his windbreaker pocket indifferently. Is this some kind of magic? Joseph's eyes glowed. The method that could turn a living thing into a dead thing aroused his curiosity. Seeing that the other party was just smiling at him, Joseph, who knew what was more important at the moment, took a deep breath and said, I'm investigating Sagana. With Johan's temper, if he asked you to come to me, you must be one of the seeds. Seed. Joseph saw the other party nod, and he became more convinced in his heart. Looking at your behavior, not like an ordinary person, you are indeed affected by those things. According to Joseph's words, seeds seem to be abnormal. I'm also investigating. To make a long story short, as a seed, you have your own mission, and this mission is not something to be proud of. According to my investigation, if you complete your mission, the whole world will be destroyed. I mean, the whole world. This planet, and even outside this planet, including the moon. Joseph's expression became more serious. We must find a way to prevent Sagana from waking up. Savior? Me? Hahaha, what an unexpected joke. Don't be happy too soon. To be honest, I really hate your smiling face. There are many seeds in the world, and you are not the only one. Even if you commit suicide, there will be another seed appearing. The seeds will continue to appear until they can complete their mission. Joseph continued, the monster just now was awakened by me. She is one of the ancient monsters in the underground development. She knows enough information we want. If she can help us, we can save the world, but this guy's mouth is too tight. My research is limited to this. I wanted to go further, but she escaped and almost killed me. Your ability is very special. If you can help me catch her, maybe our research can go further. Joseph said, wiping the blood on his face and cursing. She is a monster, isn't she? You can go to the Casero area and take a look. That guy will definitely not give up after being repelled by you. For the time being, she can only go there. Joseph seemed to be guessing, but his words were very certain. I like running errands for others the most, but I don't like to trust others easily. What do you want to do? Chapter 98 Old Gods. Oakmont, Barcelona. This is a rare coastal area without any traces of Innsmouth people. The absence of Innsmouth people also means that it is impossible to catch fish in this place. It is a place that fish heads have given up. In contrast, the feeling of the waves hitting people's faces is much more comfortable. This comfort is only compared to other docks. Lizu just stepped into the Barcelona area. Another scream. After the opening of the play, can the protagonist always encounter all the stories? Lizu raised his head and looked up at the full moon above his head. The moon is so close that it may fall and hit his head at any time, and it may turn bloody at any time. Although the moon is bright, the ground is dark, and it is difficult to walk. Lizu's patent leather boots did not stop, and he walked towards the direction of the scream. A pistol in his left hand and a knife in his right hand. The toy has become a murder weapon in the blink of an eye. The blade reflects the moonlight. These two things can easily leave fatal scars on the enemy. No one will doubt the sharpness of the blade, let alone the strength of the bullet. The screams continued. Walking into the fish warehouse with a pungent smell of blood, what caught my eye was a thick wooden stake, and the vices, soldering irons, and salt scattered on the ground. It seemed to say that this place was used for everything except storing seafood. In the center, on the ground, a twisted figure lay. His whole body was twisting. His whole body was stained with blood, and the exposed skin was full of cruel nail scratches. The ground was full of broken teeth with blood sticking to it. You may need to be quieter, or crazier. Lizu squatted in front of the other person. The halo ability called Influencer spread invisibly, and the struggling poor guy seemed to be really affected by Lizu's mood and endured the pain. After calming down, the poor guy who was attacked by an inexplicable force opened his eyes and looked at Lizu quietly. You shouldn't help these two bastards. Joseph will be prepared next time. I can't punish him so easily or even kill him. Huh. Are you the bald lady just now? Putting the bald head and the lady together, it is really hard to tell whether he is mocking or respecting. Maybe the evil taste is more serious. Lizu didn't believe that his influencer aura could have such a great ability to make people forget their pain. It seems that the bald lady used some method to control the poor man's consciousness. Washer, I'm an ancient dead soul, but I was summoned by that bastard Joseph. He kept resurrecting me and torturing me. Whenever I wanted to rest, he would always use secret techniques to wake me up. He wanted to get those secret knowledge from me, the knowledge that has been cut off for centuries. But that knowledge can only be told to the seeds. No matter how he threatens me, he will only get my curse and my hatred. The voice was full of hatred. She really hated Joseph thoroughly. Looking at the huge wooden stake standing in the center and the interrogation equipment similar to the operating room, it is not difficult to guess what the priestess Washer has endured. Washer almost immediately offered his olive branch. Seed, you need to complete your mission. I will tell you everything, but before I tell you, you must do one thing: kill Joseph. That's all? Lizu didn't seem surprised at all. This didn't seem to be a difficult thing for him. Of course, I brought him here to save time. Who knows if we will recognize each other after 2 hours of dawn? He can save time for our actions, which is really good, Lizu said, and took out a toy from his pocket. It was the crazy laughing eagle girl. Washer's expression was a little distorted. Although this woman with wings might not be able to defeat him, she also brought a lot of trouble to him who was not healed from serious injuries. Sorry, it's this. Lizu put away the eagle girl and took out another plastic toy the size of a little finger. At first glance, it looked a bit like Joseph's demeanor. Now he is yours. Lizu spread his hands, and the Joseph humanoid toy fell to the ground, rolled twice and slowly grew up. At that moment, the black fog filled the air and pounced on Joseph, who was still in a daze. In the first second of waking up, which was also the countdown to the last few seconds of his life, Joseph instantly understood his current situation. He turned to the big man Lizu, eager to get his help. You can't do this. She is not a human. She is a monster. No matter what she promised you, she will definitely kill you. Let's kill her together. I have a way. I will definitely know everything from her. I believe you. Lizu stood up with his knees, watching the black smoke condense into the appearance of the priestess Wusha. The dark, shriveled, ugly bald woman hugged Joseph tightly. She was like a vampire, biting Joseph's neck. The handsome man was instantly sucked dry of blood and turned into a skeleton with skin and bones. The blood of my enemies can make me recover faster. Wusha stood up and licked the blood at the corner of her mouth with satisfaction. The full Wusha did not look as scary as before, even though she was still bald now. This world is full of indescribable gods, old gods, and the former rulers of the world. Compared to, Wusha recalled the blood, as if he could taste the memories in the blood. God, demons, do not exist. How could God respond to the prayers of ants and bring down miracles for them? Just like humans will help ants, they may also step on ants to death, just on a whim. With the human brain, just trying to understand those indescribable existences is enough to drive the brain crazy. I can't explain their existence, and it's impossible to try to understand them. Under here, Washer pointed to the ground. There are the indescribable old rulers. As a seed, you need to awaken the old rulers. The old rulers. So far, he has encountered enough strange things, but he has never seen the so-called God. The only miracle seems to be the reincarnation of time. Washer did not lie. The world exploration level that has increased to 14% also proves that this world is unusual and is not a strange island where cultists gather. Instead, under his feet, there really was sleeping the unspeakable thing called the Old Ones. Can you 100% understand the so-called Old Ones? He was even more interested in this. Seed, go and complete your mission. I'm going to return to my palace to have a good rest. I look forward to your good news. Although Washer said so, his eyes were fixed on Lizu, without moving a step. Lizu also looked at him, and a smile gradually appeared on his face. Now go and complete your mission. Seed Washer was still persuading, but his eyes were full of vigilance. Thank you to Nyan for the reward. Chapter 99 Salt Ash Resurrection. They both distrusted each other and were waiting for the other to turn around. How could Washer let down his guard against a guy with the seeds of the old ones? These guys were all real lunatics. Lizu said, of course, but before that, I have to do one more thing. The long sword was raised, and the pistol was slightly tilted. Bang! The bullet sounded, and the body with the acrobatics bonus rushed out the moment he fired the gun. The bullet did not hit Washer, but it was like the horn of the battle. Once it sounded, one of the two must die. Lizu's indescribably agile figure moved quickly. The blade flashed, but unfortunately, it only chopped the black smoke. Humans, full of lies. Damn it. Damn it. Washer's curse-like scolding came from all directions. In response to Washer, bullets were fired at tricky angles but extremely accurate. The priest used a gun, which was specially modified to be able to fire rapidly. For a moment, the spacious space was ignited by the dazzling fire from the muzzle. Lizu held the gun and rotated his body in place, but the long sword in his hand did not stop. The long sword was swung to resist the black smoke attacking from all directions. Ding. After more than a dozen collisions, even though the sword was specially processed and manufactured, it was broken by Washer's sharp fingernails. The barrel of the gun was hot and the bullet was fired empty. The black smoke instantly seized this opportunity and crashed into Lizu's arms. The bald woman's strange stench of rotting animals penetrated into his nose. Lizu didn't have time to make a disgusted expression. His body began to float, and his toes slowly left the ground. Washer pinched Lizu's neck. She had already won. Washer was unhappy and pinched Lizu's neck herself. Lizu, whose face turned blue because he couldn't breathe, grinned ferociously. What are you laughing at, Seed? Can ordinary humans without weapons be his opponents? No, I was just thinking that if a bald man stayed with her, Yao would definitely go crazy. What? Washer didn't understand what he meant. Lizu had already raised his hand and grabbed Washer's bald head. Tick tick, nosebleed. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. What kind of evil magic is this? Washer was terrified. Ah. The scream just reached its climax and stopped abruptly. Boom. Lizu fell to the ground. His body was weak, but he was also trying to tremble, trying to absorb more air. Lizu lay on the ground, lying in a big letter shape. His temples were grey, as if his life was drained away in an instant, and he lost several years of vitality. And in the same place, there was a dark-skinned stuffed toy that looked like Washer. The nosebleed dripped down Lizu's cheek, with no intention of stopping, but it didn't get worse. It was like an fourth drip in the hospital, one drop at a time, removed with a heartbeat. After 10 minutes, Lizu, whose chest rose and fell steadily, finally sat up with his elbows on the ground. Ahem. I almost died here. He looked at the body of the victim before. The struggling and twisted person had completely died. Washer's hatred for him was no less than Joseph's hatred. He might be one of the culprits who tortured Washer. Lizu struggled to stand up and walk to Joseph's body. There were still a few pieces of paper hidden in his chest. These pieces of paper seemed to have special power, and they were alive, swinging towards Lizu. Lizu bent down to pick up the paper. He took a lot of effort to make this move. There were complex magic circles drawn on the paper. Strange. It seemed that the spells were imitated by some strange sounds, and there were very strange requirements. The ashes of the corpse, and salt. The resurrection spell. It seemed that the method of Washer's awakening was not difficult to see. There is still 1 hour. Lizu glanced at the time. Dawn was just around the corner. He had just got a clue. If he wanted to make a breakthrough before the reincarnation began again, he had to act quickly. In this weird occupant, before there were more and more Lizu. Guided by the moonlight, Lizu strolled along the path paved by the cold moonlight. He really didn't look like he was in a hurry. Oakmont, Edwin District. If the most famous place in this area is to be said, it must not be a certain tavern, nor a hot pole dancer with a fish head. It is St. Michael's Cathedral. Everyone in Oakmont has his own beliefs. As far as Lizu knows, Dagon, the Yellow Clothes organization related to the Yellow Seal, and a certain unspeakable thing that caused Lizu to become a seed and called him across several worlds. And his destination this time is obviously a gathering place for another god and his believers. St. Michael's Cathedral. According to the last message left by Washer, Lizu came to St. Michael's Cathedral, but the church was empty at this time. The strong smell of gasoline and the red oil drum tilted on the ground. Someone wanted to burn himself. Purify yourself. The white note floated at Lizu's feet, as if waiting for him to open it. Cow Coffee just glanced at the words on the ground and began to clear his throat. But the footsteps upstairs interrupted his shouting behavior earlier. On the second floor, the woman squatting on the ground covered her face and cried, "Madam, is there anything I can help you with?" Lizu was often very gentlemanly, provided that the object of his gentlemanly behavior could arouse enough interest in him, such as the woman in front of him who smelled of gasoline. "I miss the purification ceremony." The woman raised her head and looked at Lizu with tears in her eyes, wondering, have we met somewhere before? Then it's really fate. It was just a woman who poured gasoline and wanted to purify herself. There were a lot of such low-level lunatics in Arkham. He was not interested in paying too much attention to her. "If you are here to find someone, I'm afraid you will come in vain. They just passed the purification and went to a new reincarnation." As she said this, she was about to cry again. Before that idiot set himself on fire. Before that. As a gentleman who respected other people's beliefs very much, Lizu was very careful about his words and deeds. However, an invisible spiritual influence radiated from him. The sobbing woman gradually calmed down. "Did they leave anything behind?" A bald woman introduced me. "Here you are, the seed." The woman's attitude suddenly changed. "I've seen you in the revelation of the gods. I've seen you in my dreams." "Really? Nice to meet you again." Lizu looked around. It's really uncomfortable to feel that no matter what you do, it's in the other party's plan. What on earth are those indescribable things? Occasionally, an idea would pop up in his mind. That feeling was like squatting on the ground when I was a child, drawing a circle, and then catching an ant and throwing it in. Watching the ants running around is the greatest fun. There is something left for you in the basement. The revelation in the dream said that the seed will start a new reincarnation. It is also possible that the gods will come to this world. Ha ha ha. The world where the gods arrive is so great. She spoke a little neurotically, staring at Lizu. "We have made a lot of preparations in anticipation of your arrival. Those things are in the basement. Only the seeds can open them. That will save you a lot of effort." Chapter 100, The Savior. Lizu. The basement of St. Michael's Cathedral. As soon as he walked into the basement entrance that turned diagonally downward, the coldness that was unique to Oakmont hit him. There was no handrail in the basement stairs, and there was burning wax at the corner. I don't know whether it was because of the believer's love for fire or the fear of slipping and accidentally stepping on the road of reincarnation. Behind the twisted stairs was a dark corridor with a long and difficult to see end. After twisting the curved corridor, a small altar appeared in front of Lizu. The altar was facing a strange and twisted door, which seemed to be poured with cement and cooled on the wall. There were countless octopus tentacles. Just looking at the octopus tentacles, Lizu's mind was somewhat out of control. The degree of world exploration is 15%, 0.16%, 0.17%. The truth of the world, everything he explored, was behind this twisted and weird wall. Lizu walked quickly to the door and pressed his hands on the wall. The ability of toyization was activated, and he had the ability to turn almost everything into a toy collection, but at this moment it seemed to be blocked. The white hair on his temples also recorded how much the battle between Lizu and Washer had cost before. The white hair continued to climb, slowly extending upward from the temples. Lizu coughed and ended the attempt. It was useless. Even through life force, there was no way to open this wall that seemed to be made of ordinary cement. Lizu turned around. His face was a little vicissitudes. Turning around to search in the basement, it was much easier. A pile of torn diary papers. A broken stone. Looking at the records in the diary, Lizu sighed. Another decryption? I'm not good at this. Wait, maybe our little Charlie can help with this? There is not much time left before sunrise. Charles Reed, a detective. He is still entangled in that strange case, investigating a mirror for the gorilla of Throgmorton, his employer. Mr. This mirror and Throgmorton's mother are certainly not the biological mother of Gorilla Face. Everyone knows that Throgmorton's mother is a real white gorilla. This mother is a legitimate wife, but she is not mentally normal. Thinking of this, Charles Reed couldn't help but think of the Bruce Wayne who came to Oakmont with him. If the other party hadn't suddenly run away, he wouldn't have suffered skin injuries because of some small fights. Should I build a basement in my house in Boston in the future? Reed moved the mirror and moved it in the basement with difficulty. All the truth seemed to be revealed to him soon. Bruce, that bastard, must have a lot of useful information. Thinking of Lizu, Reed couldn't be happy again. The other party seemed to have mastered a very important clue and kept going deeper, but he was always unable to get away because of trivial things. There was also a voice in the dark telling him that what he was doing now was not his mission and he had more important things to do. Okay, let me see who you are. Reed stood in front of the altar and took out a pistol. Snap, the mirror is shaking. Snap snap. The sound of the mirror shattering came from all directions, but the mirror in front of him was not damaged. A faint voice crawled from all directions. Woo, that sound would definitely make the hair stand on end and the mind dazed. Reed raised his gun and tried to shoot at the mirror. Bang, the mirror shattered. But the woo sound did not disappear completely, but got closer and closer. A few more shots until the bullet hit the hole. The sound did not weaken at all, but became clearer and clearer. Run. Reed had only this idea at this time. Fortunately, the retreat was not blocked by the strange woo sound, so he could escape temporarily. Woo followed Reed out of the basement, mixed with the sea breeze, and the woo sound gradually became clearer and turned into the murmur of a strange woman, like a woman with bleeding eyes, curled up in the wind of the night, looking at you with empty eyes, telling her own tragic story. Ha. Reed suddenly woke up from the horrible mental world. The street lamps in the distance guided Reed. The strange voice followed closely behind, getting closer and closer. Bang, the street lamps exploded. Reed ran wildly along the road full of street lamps. The only sound he could hear on the muddy brick road was the panic stomping of Reed's leather boots. Behind him, the street lamps exploded one by one, and the lamp posts painted with night paint trembled strangely. Ha ha ha. You are here. The voice suddenly came from above his head. Bruce. Reed was surprised. He looked up and saw Bruce Wayne being carried by a winged woman, flying from the distant sky. Under the huge full moon that was getting closer and closer, the woman with her wings spread out, carrying a strange guy on her back. It formed a picture that was distorted. You bastard, hurry up. Save me. Charles was stunned for only a moment, then he came to his senses. That guy always has all kinds of strange toys and women around him, and he is no longer surprised. But now the most important thing is to let him save his life. The eagle girl carrying Lizu is like a wild horse that cannot be tamed. Only by looking carefully can you find that she is not willing to be this means of transportation. But every time she resists, she will be resolved. Ha ha ha. Try this. A small thing was thrown down. A stuffed toy fell at Reed's feet. Bruce? Reed looked at the thing at his feet in confusion. Whoosh. The black fog expanded, and in an instant, a bald woman appeared at Reed's feet. I will kill you. The bald woman in ancient clothes raised her head and roared at Lizu in the sky. She turned into black fog and rushed into the sky. Woo woo, the strange voice behind her has already rushed over. Evil spirit. The bald woman washer turned around, her eyes flashing with strange blue light. She raised her hands and pushed forward towards the void that was crushing the street lamplights. She even chanted an incomprehensible spell. The two sides were deadlocked. To Reed, an ordinary person, this was just a bald, charcoal black woman, raging. But Reed himself could imagine how dangerous this was. He stepped back a few steps, watching the bald woman finish the spell, and then turned around, as if she had done something insignificant. I'll eat you later. Washer glanced at Reed. Another monster. Reed came to a conclusion in his heart instantly. I must kill you. Washer ordered Lizu, who was still entangled in the sky above his head. Ha 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 ha. The eagle girl who was forced to carry Lizu on her back laughed. She found Washer and instantly lost interest in Lizu, the trouble that could not be killed. She swooped down and killed Washer. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.